Chapter 970. Shut up. Hutu suddenly woke up and scolded the people of the sorcerer tribe. Everyone was stunned and did not know why Hutu scolded them. The outside world says that we sorcerer tribe are good at killing. Now it seems that it is true. How can we be Yi Xian's match? Quickly put away your Dharma treasures and spiritual weapons and welcome Yi Xian with me. Hutu said in shock and anger. Then she quickly ordered the ancestors of Sorcerer to hold the grandest welcome ceremony to welcome Yi Xian's arrival. She also warned the other people not to attack Yi Xian no matter what he did. Otherwise, he would be punished according to the rules of the tribe. When Hutu gave a series of orders, the people of the Sorcerer tribe present were stunned and could not believe their ears. Why did Goddess Hutu, who was arrogant just now, become so weak at this moment? Unfortunately, before they could figure out the key point, Hutu had already asked the ancestors of Sorcerer to welcome Yi Xian. This also woke the other people of the Sorcerer tribe up and they followed Nuwa's instructions. Outside the mountain gate of the Sorcerer tribe. Since the Sorcerer tribe walked out of the ancestral land, the 12 ancestral Sorcerer mountains also appeared in the East continent. They occupied thousands of miles of land and became the place where the orthodoxy of the Sorcerer tribe was located. Outside the mountain gate. The two guards from the shaman tribe trembled as they guarded the mountain gate anxiously. This was because there was a person standing in front of them. This person looked amiable, but he was actually an important person who could shake the world. He was an important person who they were extremely afraid of. Yi Xian was dressed in black and his black hair was scattered behind his head. He looked at the 12 ancestral sorcerer mountains with his hands behind his back. There was no aura around him, as if he was just there for a sightseeing. As the saying goes, try peaceful means before resorting to force. This was the original intention of Yi Xian's trip. After all, he was not there to exterminate the sorcerer tribe, but to find the news of Candle Dragon and Dijiang. It was better to be gentle. We are honored that Yi Tiandi has come to the sorcerer tribe. Rumble. The divine light of the way of heaven filled the air as Hutu arrived on a cloud. She was followed by a few ancestral sorcerers and appeared in front of the mountain gate in an instant. However, when Hutu saw Yi Xian's appearance, her eyes instantly froze. Then, she forcefully suppressed the panic in her heart. Yi Tiandi. Hutu made a Taoist bow and showed a kind smile as a greeting to Yi Xian. Greetings, Goddess Hutu. Yi Xian smiled faintly. He cupped his hands and bowed to Hutu, but this made Hutu's expression change. She hurriedly returned the greeting and said, Yi Tiandi has helped me become a saint. I dare not accept this greeting. Yi Xian said gently, I came to the sorcerer tribe today because I miss you, goddess. Back then, I left you in a hurry at the heaven-mending grand banquet, and I never had the chance to meet you again. This is my regret. I came uninvited today, and I hope you can forgive me. Looking at Yi Xian's courteous appearance, Hutu's smile stiffened. This Yi Xian had always called her empress. It seemed humble and polite, but in reality, the relationship between the two of them was 1,000 miles apart. After all, their cultivations were almost the same, so they should be called fellow Taoist. Moreover, Hutu did not forget that she had hit Yi Xian when he was down at the heaven-mending grand banquet. This was a huge karma. If Yi Xian came to the sorcerer tribe today because he missed her, Hutu would probably call herself an idiot. I wouldn't dare. Heavenly Emperor, please come in. Hutu lowered her posture and hurriedly invited Yi Xian into the sorcerer tribe. Yi Xian smiled faintly and stepped through the mountain gate into the ancestral land of the sorcerer tribe. Thump, thump, thump. The war drums of the sorcerer tribe were beating, and the sound of heaven and earth was heard. Golden petals floated between heaven and earth, and women of the sorcerer tribe danced in the sky and on the earth. Sweet springs gushed out from the ground. The 12 ancestral sorcerer mountains were rumbling and shining. A large number of sorcerer tribe members were welcoming Yi Xian's arrival in the mountains. This was the grandest welcome ceremony of the sorcerer tribe, and it was also something that Hutu passed down. Although many people of the sorcerer tribe were dissatisfied, they did not dare to disobey the orders of the sage. Hutu and several ancestral sorcerers led the way for Yi Xian. Yi Xian strolled behind them until they arrived at the sorcerer tribe's temple. The grand welcome ceremony ended there. Yi Tiandi, please. Hutu invited Yi Xian to enter the sorcerer tribe's temple. Yi Xian, accompanied by Hutu and several ancestral sorcerers, also entered the temple until the gate of the sorcerer tribe's temple was closed and completely cut off from the outside world. At the same time, the 12 heavenly beings killing formation was quietly activated and directly locked onto the sorcerer tribe's temple. Obviously, this was also Hutu's order. After all, Yi Xian did not come with good intentions. Not only did he have a great grudge against the sorcerer tribe, but he also had a great karma with her. If they really fought, the 12 heavenly beings killing formation would be a safeguard. In the sorcerer tribe's temple, Hutu smiled and sat cross-legged on a golden auspicious cloud. Several ancestral sorcerers stood behind her and looked at Yi Xian with fear. On the other hand, Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the void. There was no power around him, and he did not show any killing intent. Instead, he looked at Hutu with a calm face. I wonder what important matter Yi Tiandi has for the sorcerer tribe. Hutu said with a smile. She was also testing Yi Xian. She had already raised her cultivation to the peak and had been wary of Yi Xian since a long time ago. As the saying goes, one does not visit a temple for no reason. My friend Hutu has a deep karma with me. Whether it was before or after I became a sage, I came here today because I have something to ask of you. Yi Xian said with a sigh. As Yi Xian's words fell, Hutu's heavy heart suddenly relaxed. She was really afraid that Yi Xian would come to settle the scores with her in the past. Now it seemed that there was still room for reconciliation. This could also prevent a great calamity. No matter what your request is, as long as it is within the power of the sorcerer tribe and we will definitely not refuse. Hutu almost patted her chest and promised that as long as she could ease the relationship with Yi Xian, she would satisfy Yi Xian no matter what it was. Actually, my request is very simple. First, I don't want the sorcerer tribe's treasures. Second, I don't want the sorcerer tribe's cultivation methods. I will definitely not make things difficult for you and the sorcerer tribe, Yi Xian said gently. Oh. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Hutu was slightly stunned. She said, then what do you want? Although I have achieved Tao in a different way, I have always admired the prestige of the 12 ancient sorcerers, especially the Time Ancestor Sorcerer Candle Dragon and the Space Ancestor Sorcerer Dijiang. These two ancient sorcerers control the power of time and space. I really want to see them. If I can sit down and discuss Tao with these two ancient sorcerers, my cultivation will definitely improve further, Yi Xian said tirelessly. Dijiang? Candle Dragon. Hearing Yi Xian's request, Hutu muttered to herself. She secretly observed Yi Xian's expression, but Yi Xian was very calm and did not show any strange expression. Alas! Suddenly, Hutu sighed and said with a wry smile, Yi Tiandi, the whereabouts of Candle Dragon and Dijiang are uncertain. Except for the two of them who participated in the Great War of Sorcerer and Demon, no one knows where they are for countless years. Even I can't find them. Hutu was not stupid. She did not believe that Yi Xian only wanted to sit down and discuss Tao with Dijiang and Candle Dragon. There must be an ulterior motive. However, Dijiang and Candle Dragon were too important to the sorcerer tribe. They could not have any good corpses. That was why Hutu tactfully rejected Yi Xian. Oh. The smile on Yi Xian's face gradually disappeared, and a touch of coldness appeared. An extremely terrifying killing intent spread out and shrouded Hutu and the other ancient sorcerers in an instant. So, you are rejecting me? Chapter 971. Yi Xian was still smiling innocently just a moment ago, but in an instant, his expression turned sinister and terrifying, as if he was about to devour someone. Yi Tiandi, please don't misunderstand. I really don't know where the candle dragon and Di Jiang are. Hutu's expression changed and she hurriedly explained. However, the samsara holy light around her was boiling. Clearly, she was afraid that Yi Xian would attack her. She was afraid, very afraid. She was afraid from the bottom of her heart. This was how Hutu felt about Yi Xian. Nuwa had died too tragically, and Yi Xian was the cause of it all. Although she was a heavenly path saint and was known to be immortal, Nuwa was a good example. How could she dare to be careless about Yi Xian? I am a very reasonable person. Back then, I helped you to become a saint, and you fulfilled 3 of my conditions. However, you teamed up with Yuanshi Tianzuan and the others to attack me at the Skymender festival. Let's settle this today. Rumble. Yi Xian slowly stood up. Tongtian's killing intent shot out. Streaks of black lightning circled around him, causing the entire sorcerer tribe temple to shake violently as if it was about to collapse at any time. Among the 4 tribulations of the heavenly path, the Tongtian had passed through the earth. Yi Xian's cultivation was superior to Hutu's, and his physical body was indestructible. Furthermore, his spells and abhijna were even more terrifying. Furthermore, he had the heaven-destroying halberd and the nirvana battle armor. At this moment, he was displaying an overwhelming killing intent. This made Hutu's heart tremble. She looked at Yi Xian seriously. Yi Tiandi, I really don't know where the candle dragon and Di Jiang are. Why do you have to be so aggressive? Hutu suppressed her anger and explained to Yi Xian. You only have 2 choices. You can either tell me where Di Jiang and the candle dragon are, or I'll destroy your witch tribe and kill you, the heavenly Tao saint. Yi Xian's words were cold, cruel, gloomy, and vicious, like a gust of cold wind blowing across the 9 heavens. It made Hutu and the few grand magi shiver uncontrollably, and a great panic rose in their hearts. He was too strong. He was terrifyingly strong. Hutu clearly remembered that during the Skymender festival, Yi Xian's cultivation was only on par with hers and Nuwa's. But now, his aura had directly suppressed hers, making her feel suffocated. How did Yi Xian cultivate to this level in such a short time? Could it be that the sage realm was not the end of cultivation? Was there a higher realm? Suddenly, a huge question popped up in Huda's mind, but before she could continue thinking, Yi Xian's killing intent alerted her. Yi Tiandi, please wait. Huda shuddered and hurriedly pleaded with Yi Xian in a soft voice. She no longer had the dignity of a sage. Oh, you've thought it through. Yi Xian smiled faintly and sat down again. Yi Xian, you bastard, I'll kill you. Zhurong had just woken up. He was still immersed in the great calamity that he had encountered in the past. When he saw Yi Xian in front of him, he threw a punch at Yi Xian like a madman. Stop. Hutu's expression changed slightly. She swung her sleeve and sent Zhurong flying away. This also made Zhurong look at Hutu abruptly, and then he was dumbfounded. Hutu, why are you here? Your cultivation. When he saw the heavenly law's holy light surrounding Hutu, Zhurong yelled excitedly. He even clamored for Hutu to kill Yi Xian with him. However, what Hutu said next extinguished the fire in Zhurong's heart like a basin of cold water. Hutu also secretly told Zhurong that he had been suppressed for tens of thousands of years. Hutu made it short and quickly told Zhurong what had happened in the past tens of thousands of years. She also warned him not to provoke Yi Xian again. Otherwise, the Grand Magi would face a great calamity today. You achieved Tao in a different way. And you killed Nuwa. Zhurong looked at Yi Xian in horror. He could not believe what he had heard. In Zhurong's memory, Yi Xian was at most a sage to be. But now, he had achieved Tao in a different way. Even the heavenly law sages were extremely afraid of him. Zhurong was speechless, silent, and even sober. This was how he felt at the moment. He stood silently behind Hutu, his face full of bitterness. If Hutu and the others took Yi Xian's strength for granted, Zhurong could not calm down. When he first met Yi Xian was just on par with him. But in less than 100,000 years, Yi Xian had surpassed him so much that he had become an existence that he could only look up to. Yi Tiandi, I'll summon the 12 ancestors of sorcery back. Please. The gate of the divine temple of the sorcerer tribe was opening. Hutu invited Yi Xian out of the temple. Obviously, she wanted to fulfill her promise to Yi Xian and send him away as soon as possible. Chapter 972. In the outside world. At the peak of the ancestral sorcerer mountain. The 12 divine beings' killing formation covered the sky and the earth. Endless evil spirit filled the sky. The 12 black banners swayed the sky and the ancient songs of the sorcerer tribe reverberated between heaven and earth. Yi Xian stood in the middle of the 12 divine fiend formation. He could completely feel the terror of this formation. Just the baleful aura circulating around him was enough to annihilate the primordial spirit of a great Luo golden immortal. Even if a quasi-sage wasn't in such a formation, he would still die. However, Yi Xian wasn't afraid at all. He calmly stood in the middle of the number 1 formation of the 3 realms, completely ignoring the might of the 12 divine fiends formation. The top formation of the 3 realms was indeed terrifying, but only to others. With Yi Xian's current cultivation, this formation was not a threat to him. Unless the 12 ancestors of sorcerer condensed the real body of Pangu, they could not pose any threat to him. There were 12 black banners in the 12 divine beings' killing formation. Under each banner stood an ancestor of sorcerer, which also represented their position. Not to mention that Hutu was a sage, she was the ancestor of sorcerer of earth. At this moment, she was standing under a black banner. The witch light around her soared into the sky. The token of the ancestor of sorcerer floated above her head and glowed slowly. Zhurong, the ancestor of fire of the south. Xian Ming, the ancestor of rain. Chang Liang, the ancestor of thunder. Tian Hao, the ancestor of wind. There were 5 ancestors of sorcerer here. They stood under the black banners and took out their tokens. They were also chanting a mysterious scripture, as if they were calling for their companions. The 5 ancestors of sorcerer together with the 12 divine beings killing formation was the way to summon other ancestors of sorcerer. Once they sensed their summons, the other 7 ancestors of sorcerer would definitely come back quickly. Yi Xian stood in a desolate manner. He did not move or speak, allowing Hutu and the 4 ancestors of sorcerer to cast their spells. He was as calm as water, without any ripples. To be honest, the sorcerer tribe had a great conflict with him. They had caused him a lot of trouble in the past, not to mention the karma between him and Hutu. With Yi Xian's current cultivation, it would not be difficult for him to exterminate the sorcerer tribe. It would also be easy for him to kill these ancestral sorcerers. However, Yi Xian did not want to do that because his real target was the Candle Dragon and Di Jiang. If he really destroyed the sorcerer tribe, it would be even harder for him to find the 2 of them. Therefore, he could only force Hutu to find 2 people for him. This was his real goal. It was much better than destroying the shaman tribe. Moreover, Yi Xian also felt guilty towards one person, the goddess of Guanghan. Back then, he fell into a state of paranoia and killed the goddess of Guanghan with his own hands. This was his greatest regret. If he killed the goddess of Guanghan's clan as well, Yi Xian would never be able to overcome this hurdle in his heart. Time flowed by like water. Yi Xian was like an immovable rock, quietly waiting for the return of the other ancestral magi. When the 100th year had passed, the first one to return was Gong Gong, the ancestral magi of water. Is Zhu Rong here? Gong Gong was tall and sturdy, with ripples around his body. When he returned to the shaman tribe, the first thing he asked was his old rival. However, before he could see the situation clearly, Hutu had already transmitted a message to him quickly, which made Gong Gong look at Yi Xian with great surprise in his eyes. Since the Great War of Witch Demon Tribe, Gong Gong had gone to outer space to cultivate in seclusion on a withered star. If he had not sensed the summoning of Hutu and the others, he would not have known when he would wake up and return to the shaman tribe. Is this guy really so scary? Gong Gong narrowed his eyes and looked at Yi Xian with a gloomy face. However, he had to believe Hutu's message. He could only take out his ancestral magi divine token and join the summoning like the other ancestral magi. The appearance of Gong Gong made Yi Xian's eyes brighten. He knew that Hutu did not lie to him. This method could indeed summon the other ancestral magi. 1,000 years later. Gomang, ancestral magi of wood in the east. Rushu, ancestral magi of gold in the west. Tianwu, ancestral magi of wind. Chizi, ancestral magi of lightning. Shebi Shur, ancestral magi of weather. 5 ancestral magi had returned from different places and all of them had returned to the shaman tribe. 10 ancestral magi had gathered under the 12 black banners. With the return of the 10 ancestral magi, the 12 divine beings' killing formation became more and more terrifying. Strands of earth-shattering evil spirit soared into the sky, and even the surrounding space showed faint signs of collapse. This was not the scariest thing. The scariest thing was that the 12 divine beings' killing formation had faintly condensed a towering figure. This figure was extremely illusory and gave people a sense of uncertainty. However, a boundless aura that could suppress all worlds was spreading out from it, making people who looked at it feel a great sense of submission. The real body of Pangu? Looking at this faintly discernible figure, Yi Xian narrowed his eyes gradually. He could tell at a glance that this figure must be the real body of Pangu. If the 12 ancestral magi gathered together, perhaps the real body of Pangu could really appear in the world. A sense of crisis appeared in Yi Xian's heart, which also made him stare at the 10 ancestral magi with flickering eyes. If Dijiang and Candle Jiuyin returned at the same time, they could launch the 12 divine beings' killing formation and condense the real body of Pangu. Moreover, this formation was controlled by Hutu, a heavenly sage. Yi Xian would be in great danger. The real body of Pangu. This was no child's play. It was as heavy as the firmament. If the 12 ancestral magi really condensed the real body of Pangu, even Yi Xian would have to flee. Of course, Yi Xian had expected this, and he would never wait for death. As long as he found that something was wrong, he would kill an ancestral magi immediately and prevent the real body of Pangu from condensing. Yi Xian was a person with a strong desire for control. He would never let things get out of his control and put himself in danger. At this moment, Hutu's expression was cold, but there was a hint of excitement in her eyes. At this moment, the 10 ancestral magi had returned, and the shadow of Pangu was looming. As long as Dijiang and Candle Jiuyin returned, they could condense the real body of Pangu. However, when Hutu was excited, her eyes fell on Yi Xian. When she saw Yi Xian nodding and smiling at her, Hutu's breath suddenly stopped, and a sense of uneasiness rose in her heart. Then, she forced a smile and nodded at Yi Xian, but there was a trace of seriousness in her eyes. Hutu did want to condense the real body of Pangu and kill Yi Xian here, which was also her truest thought. However, when she saw Yi Xian's smiling face, the decision in her heart suddenly wavered. Could she really kill Yi Xian by condensing the real body of Pangu? Hutu was asking herself. Her will was constantly wavering, and she was completely in a dilemma. Her plan was very good, and it was progressing smoothly. The 10 ancestral magi had returned, and only 2 more ancestral magi were left to condense the real body of Pangu. However, Hutu's will was wavering, and scenes of Yi Xian's deeds appeared in her mind. Yi Xian had experienced countless death tribulations, but he still managed to survive unscathed. Nuwa chased after him, Yuanzhi wanted to kill him, and even several sages of heavenly law joined hands. Even Dao Tianzuan and Lao Tzu could do nothing to him, but he was still alive in the world. In other words, even if Yi Xian really condensed the real body of Pangu, he was no match for him. However, wouldn't Yi Xian run away if he couldn't defeat him? If he escaped, he would be a big problem for the Wu tribe. In the future, Yi Xian would definitely exterminate the whole tribe, and even the 12 ancestral magi would not be spared. Huda gradually calmed down, because she found that she had a fatal flaw. Although the 12 ancestral magi could condense the real body of Pangu, they could not be together every day. As long as one of them had a problem, they would definitely be ruthlessly attacked by Yi Xian. Moreover, Huda could not guarantee that she could kill Yi Xian after condensing the real body of Pangu. She could completely suppress this powerful enemy between heaven and earth, which was the biggest problem. Chapter 973. In terms of cultivation, Huda was at the bottom of the heavenly path sages. However, in terms of forbearance, she could be considered the best. Otherwise, she would not have turned into Mengpa and lived in the netherworld for so many years. The 12 heavenly beings formation continued to operate. The sorcerer tribe's ballad sounded in the 12 ancestral sorcerer mountains. The return of the 10 ancestral sorcerers made the sorcerer tribe even more excited. At that moment, they were looking forward to the return of Dijiang and the Candle Dragon. The sorcerer tribe was not the only one waiting. Yi Xian was also waiting. However, he was different from the sorcerer tribe. As long as Dijiang and the Candle Dragon returned, he would attack immediately. The wait was a bit long, and it made people anxious. Yi Xian stood in the middle of the 12 divine fiend formation. His brows were tightly knitted together because Dijiang and the Candle Dragon had yet to return to the shaman clan. It had been 200 years since the return of the 10 ancestral sorcerers. Logically speaking, even if the 2 ancestral sorcerers were at the end of the world, it was enough time for them to return to the sorcerer tribe. At that moment, Yi Xian was not the only one who was suspicious. Even Hutu and the others were slightly anxious. However, they could only continue to operate the 12 heavenly beings formation and wait patiently for the 2 ancestral sorcerers to appear. Time flew by. Another 200 years had passed, but the figures of Dijiang and the Candle Dragon still hadn't appeared. This caused Yi Xian's eyes to gradually darken. Boom! Suddenly, the 12 heavenly beings formation stopped operating. The shadow of Pangu's real body also disappeared. Hutu and the 9 ancestral sorcerers withdrew their ancestral sorcerer divine tokens. Everyone looked anxious. Yi Tiandi, it's not that we lied to you. It's been 1,400 years, but Dijiang and the Candle Dragon have not returned. I'm afraid they're not in the 3 realms at all, Hutu explained to Yi Xian, slightly embarrassed. Not in the 3 realms? Yi Xian's eyes were bleak as he looked around at the world. A faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. I'm afraid they've already returned, but they haven't shown themselves yet. Who was Yi Xian? Not to mention that his cultivation base was Tongtian, just his own shrewdness and scheming was extremely deep. He thought for a moment and guessed a fact. Dijiang and the Candle Dragon must have returned, but they had hidden themselves, and he could not sense where they were. In fact, they were in the ancestral land of the sorcerer tribe. It was no wonder that Yi Xian had such a guess. Yi Xian knew very well that Dijiang and the Candle Dragon had the power of time and space respectively. Even saints could not sense where they were. Although Yi Xian's cultivation was at the level of a Tongtian, which was not inferior to that of a heavenly sage, he did not know anything about the power of time and space. Naturally, he could not find the 2 of them. If the 2 of them had already returned and concealed themselves, then Yi Xian would naturally not notice them at all. After all, only the 2 of them possessed the energy of space in the entire 3 dimensions. As Yi Xian finished speaking, Hutu and the others' expressions changed slightly. Could it be that it was really as Yi Xian had said, that Dijiang and the Candle Dragon had really returned but had not shown themselves? Friends, are you really not willing to meet me? Yi Xian looked around. His sincere voice echoed in the world, but unfortunately, he did not receive any response. It was as if Dijiang and the Candle Dragon were really not there. Looks like you're not going to give me face. Yi Xian's expression was slightly cold, and his entire body was somewhat gloomy. Strands of black lightning revolved around his body, and an earth-shattering might burst forth at this moment. Yi Tiandi, what are you doing? Looking at Yi Xian's supreme killing intent, Huda's expression changed instantly, and an extremely bad feeling rose in her heart. Since you two fellow Taoists don't want to see me, then I can only exterminate the witch clan. I just don't know if you two fellow Taoists will just stand by and watch. Yi Xian said in a mocking tone. However, as he spoke, he killed Mobile Heaven and slowly walked towards Hutu and the others. Yi Xian, do you really think that the Wu clan is easy to bully? Gong Gong was furious. He was the ancestor of water, and he controlled the essence of all water in the world. It could be said that he was an extremely proud person. Moreover, he had never seen Yi Xian's terror, so he naturally did not fear Yi Xian as much as Hutu and the others. Do you want to die? Yi Xian said indifferently. He looked at Gong Gong as if he was looking at a dead man. Be careful. Hutu knew Yi Xian's temperament too well, so she cried out. Boom. Unfortunately, Hutu's reminder was too late. Yi Xian raised his palm into the sky and pressed it down towards Gong Gong with a flip of his hand. The power that could shatter everything bloomed to the extreme, and Gong Gong didn't even have time to react before he was sent flying. He even spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Do it! Ancestor of which Xian Ming roared. Since Yi Xian had injured Gong Gong, they would be too ashamed to face their clansmen if they still pretended to turn a blind eye. Kill! The 9 ancestors of witches came together. Even Gong Gong, who was hit by Yi Xian's attack, stood up tenaciously and charged at him again. Then, his expression changed constantly, but he still gritted his teeth and attacked Yi Xian with a saint's magic. At this point, both sides had nothing to say. They could only fight, and there was no room for reconciliation. Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish. Yi Xian had the cultivation of the 4 tribulations of the way of heaven. He did not take the 9 ancestors of witches seriously at all. Only Hutu was a little troublesome, but Yi Xian did not take her seriously either. Bang! 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 Yi Xian's palm shook the sky, and the void collapsed. Yi Xian was too strong and too invincible. His attack could destroy the world, and the 9 ancestors of witches were beaten by him until they spat out blood. They were no match for him at all. There was no so-called great magic, but only a great power that could suppress everything in the world. Yi Xian's indestructible devil body was too strong, and it had already surpassed the physical body of an ancestor of witches. The 9 ancestors of witches suffered an unprecedented disaster. Their bodies were covered in blood and were completely crushed by Yi Xian. 6 paths of reincarnation. After all, Hutu was a saint of the way of heaven. Although her cultivation was not as good as Yi Xian's, she was supported by the power of the way of heaven. She barely stopped Yi Xian, and also gave the 9 ancestors of witches a chance to breathe. Child's play. Yi Xian struck out his palm, and the 6 paths of heaven's gate was destroyed. The destructive power poured down on Hutu, and she had to use a saint's great magic to resolve it. Set up the formation. Hutu shouted coldly. She could only resist Yi Xian for a moment by herself. Only when the 9 ancestors of witches activated the 12 heavenly beings killing formation could they fight Yi Xian. Rumble. 12 black banners fluttered in the sky, and 12 groups of ancestral sorcerer divine mountains glowed brightly. The 9 ancestral sorcerers wiped off the blood from the corners of their mouths and stepped into the formation one after another. As they chanted, waves of destructive power erupted from the 12 divine beings killing formation. Buzz! The shadow of Pangu was condensing, and a destructive power spread out. Hutu's body flashed, and she also stepped into the formation, which made the 12 heavenly beings killing formation more and more terrifying. Chapter 974. Kill. The shadow of Pangu stood in the sky. Although it was only a shadow, it was full of power that made people's hearts palpitate. Yi Xian frowned. Interesting. Then, let me see how powerful the Pan-Gu silhouette you generated is, said Ji Hao while looking at Ji Hao. Yi Xian took a step forward and released a power that swept across all directions. The sky-killing halberd appeared in his hand and he slashed at the shadow of Pan-Gu. Boom! The shadow of Pan-Gu was so powerful that it threw a punch at Yi Xian. When the fist and the halberd collided, the power that burst out made the whole ancestral land of the Wu tribe shake violently. Buzz! The phantom image of Pan-Gu was in extreme chaos. It was only because Yi Xian's attack was too powerful that the bodies of Hutu and the others, who were in charge of the 12 Divine Fiends formation, trembled as they continuously resisted the power that Yi Xian transmitted over. You're just a so-so. After the attack, Yi Xian felt that the shadow of Pan-Gu was no match for him. This made him show a cruel look on his face. The cultivation of the 4 tribulations of the way of heaven rose to the extreme and he directly attacked the 12 divine beings, killing formation. Stop him! Hutu shouted anxiously. The holy light of the way of heaven bloomed to the extreme. The 9 ancestors of sorcerers used all their strength and poured all their cultivation into the formation. They also made the shadow of Pan-Gu attack Yi Xian again. Bang! One punch suppressed the world and everything fell. Yi Xian's punch was so powerful that it directly shattered the shadow of Pan-Gu and made Hutu and the others stagger back. The so-called 12 divine beings killing formation collapsed. I'll send you to hell. Yi Xian's halberd danced in the sky, and strands of energy that could annihilate all things rose from the heaven-slaying halberd, directly transforming into thousands of cold lights that shot towards Hutu and the 9 ancestral shamans like a group of stars falling from the sky. Retreat quickly. Hutu's expression changed dramatically. She unleashed a reincarnation grand magic and roared at the 9 ancestral magi anxiously. At the moment, the 12 divine beings killing formation was broken, and the 9 ancestral magi were no match for Yi Xian. Hutu could only resist Yi Xian for a moment, buying time for the 9 ancestral magi to escape. Humiliation, a great humiliation. The 9 great ancestors of sorcery and a heavenly law saint were no match for Yi Xian. This was not only a disgrace to them, but also a disgrace to the entire sorcerer tribe. The 9 great ancestors of sorcery were ashamed and indignant, but there was nothing they could do because they were only sage to be and were not on the same level as Yi Xian. If they continued to advance, they would only be giving up their lives in vain. Can you stop me? Yi Xian grinned cruelly. He took a step forward and quietly appeared in front of Hutu. He slapped Hutu's head, causing her to bleed from her 7 orifices. The heavenly Tao's holy light around her crumbled inch by inch. Puff! Hutu spat out a mouthful of blood. Her entire body was dispirited, and Yi Xian's wide palm pressed down on her head, imprisoning her in the air. It was not that Hutu was not strong enough. After all, she was a heavenly law saint, but the person she was facing was too strong. She was no match for Yi Xian at all. Don't forget that Yi Xian could crush Nuwa when he was in the 3 tribulations of the heavenly law. Now he was in the 4 tribulations of the heavenly law, and Hutu's cultivation was inferior to Nuwa's. Naturally, she was defeated by Yi Xian. Creak! Ah! Yi Xian's face was cruel. He tightened his 5 fingers and exerted a terrifying force on Hutu's head. Her skull creaked and she cried out in pain. Let her go. Such a scene made the 9 ancestors of sorcerers tremble, but they still roared at Yi Xian angrily. Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not even look at the 9 ancestors of sorcerers. He squeezed Hutu's head and smiled cruelly. Then he looked around and said, if you two don't come out, don't blame me for being merciless. Silence, silence, dead silence. The 9 ancestors of sorcerers watched angrily. They clenched their fists so hard that they made cracking sounds. The eyes of the sorcerer tribe in the 12 ancestral sorcerer mountains turned red and tears of humiliation appeared in their eyes. The sorcerer tribe knew that Yi Xian was very powerful, so powerful that they could not afford to offend him. However, they did not expect Yi Xian to be so powerful that even a heavenly law saint was suppressed by him. Dijiang, Candle Dragon, if you really come back, show yourselves quickly. As long as we condense the real Pangu body, we can definitely kill Yi Xian. Gong roared furiously. The rest of the ancestors of sorcerers were also extremely angry. They hoped that Dijiang and Candle Dragon could show up. Unfortunately, no matter how Gong roared, Dijiang and Candle Dragon did not show up at all. Even if Hutu was in trouble, there was no reaction in this world. Yi Xian, Dijiang and Candle Dragon are really not here. It's useless even if you kill me. Hutu tried to persuade Yi Xian in a sorry state. There was great panic in her eyes. At this moment, Yi Xian's eyes were gloomy and his entire body was filled with a terrifying aura. However, there was a trace of doubt in his eyes. Was he wrong? Dijiang and Candle Dragon really did not come back. Impossible. Yi Xian suddenly denied this idea. After 1,400 years of summoning, the rest of the ancestors of sorcerers had already returned. How could Dijiang and Candle Dragon be an exception? Since you two don't care about brotherhood, don't blame me for being merciless. Yi Xian smiled cruelly at Hutu. No. Feeling Yi Xian's cold eyes, Hutu screamed in panic and tried to break free from Yi Xian's restraint. However, at this moment, Yi Xian's 5 fingers suddenly burst out with a destructive power. Hutu exploded into a cloud of blood mist. She was crushed by Yi Xian's hand. Damn it! The 9 ancestors of sorcerers roared in anger. They had witnessed Hutu being killed by Yi Xian, but they could not stop the tragedy from happening. Boom! The holy power of the way of heaven and the holy light rumbled. A spot of golden light was born in the void. With the support of the way of heaven, Hutu's body was condensing. She was a saint of the way of heaven, so she could naturally come back to life. Hutu. When Hutu appeared again, the 9 ancestors of sorcerers were overjoyed. Hutu quickly kept a safe distance from Yi Xian and became gloomy and silent. Yi Xian was not surprised that Hutu came back to life. After all, it took him a long time to defeat Nuwa and make her a saint. At this moment, he attacked Hutu in a hurry, so he could not kill her. Moreover, Yi Xian's real purpose was not to kill Hutu. He just wanted to force Dijiang and Candle Dragon to show up. I admire you two for being so patient. But I don't know if you will still avoid me if I destroy the whole sorcerer tribe. Yi Xian smiled cruelly. The entire world suddenly darkened as terrifying great techniques shot out from Yi Xian's hands. The entire ancestral land of the shaman clan was enveloped within them, and there were billions of bolts of lightning raging in the sky. It was obvious that if this great technique were to descend, the entire shaman clan would be annihilated. No! Hutu screamed in horror. The 9 ancestors of sorcerers turned pale. They wanted to stop Yi Xian, but they also knew that they were no match for Yi Xian at all. They were just mantises trying to stop a chariot. At this critical moment, it was a life-and-death crisis. Just as Yi Xian was about to cast this skill, a long sigh sounded between heaven and earth. Then, 2 illusory figures quietly appeared in the sky. Yi Tiandi, why do you have to force us? Chapter 975. The world was silent, and everything was silent. 2 illusory figures were walking toward Yi Xian. The space-time of the world was slightly disordered, and mysterious ripples were rippling in the world as if they were telling the ancient and mysterious space-time power. The heavens were fearless, and the earth was not shaken. When the 2 figures appeared, Hutu and the 9 ancestors of sorcery were excited, and their eyes were trembling. There was no doubt that Hutu had the highest cultivation level among the 12 ancestors of sorcery. However, there was no doubt that Dijiang and the Candle Dragon were the core of the sorcerer tribe. One was the time ancestor of sorcery, and the other was the space ancestor of sorcery. Even a saint could not do anything to them. In the universe, the laws were rampant, and the space-time power was a power that surpassed the great Tao of heaven and earth. The two figures could carry the space-time power, which was unique in the three realms. Buzz! The void manifested, and everything was silent. When the two ancestors of sorcery walked over, the space-time of the world seemed to be still, and even Yi Xian's mind was stagnant for a moment. Greetings, Yi Daoyu. The candle dragon was dressed in black, and his black hair cascaded down his back. However, his eyes did not have any white parts. Instead, they had two black pupils. When one looked into his eyes, one would feel as if one's soul was about to sink into it. Dijiang greets Yi Tiandi. Dijiang was dressed in green, and his hair was as white as snow. There were no black pupils in his eyes, but only white. At this moment, he was bowing to Yi Xian with his hands folded. Good, good, good. Yi Xian laughed heartily and said, good, 3 times. The killing skill that he had gathered disappeared, and he looked at the two ancestors of sorcery with satisfaction. Quickly gather the real body of Pangu and kill him. Suddenly, Gong Gong roared as he looked at Yi Xian with killing intent. It was obvious that the appearance of the candle dragon and Dijiang could completely condense Pangu's true body, so they could naturally kill Yi Xian here. Yi Tiandi is a guest of our shaman tribe. How can we fight against him? Dijiang sighed softly. Yi Daoyu, since you're only looking for the two of us, why do you have to involve my clan? Why don't we go somewhere else? Zhu Jiuyin said in a deep voice. All right. The person Yi Xian was looking for had already appeared. There was no need for him to hold on to the sorcerer tribe, so he immediately agreed. Swoosh! Dijiang and Candle Jiuyin looked at each other and then nodded. Their flowers turned into 2 streams of light and flew away. Yi Xian did not even look at Hutu and the 9 ancestors of sorcery. He just followed them and disappeared. As the 3 of them left, Hutu felt relieved. No matter what, she had finally sent Yi Xian away, and the shaman tribe could avoid this calamity. Hutu. Suddenly, a deep voice rang out, causing Hutu's expression to change drastically. Not only Hutu, but the 9 grand shamans were also startled, and they all looked towards the source of the voice. Candle Jiuyin? Hutu said in shock, because the Candle Jiuyin had appeared in front of them again. However, his body was illusory, and he gave off an extremely fleeting feeling. This is the time backtracking technique. I don't have much time left. Let me finish, the Candle Jiuyin said anxiously. Yi Xian is the calamity of the sorcerer tribe. He forced me and Yi Xian to harm us. Now that we've lured him away, quickly lead the sorcerer tribe to hide in the small world that Dijiang and I created. As long as Yi Xian doesn't die, the sorcerer tribe can't come out. After the Candle Jiuyin finished speaking, he threw a black jade token at Hutu. This jade token is the key to open the small world. Although you're a heavenly saint, Yi Xian already has the ability to kill a saint. You must protect the people of my clan, and don't be enemies with Yi Xian from now on, the Candle Jiuyin said quickly. Then what about you and Dijiang? Hutu's face was ghastly pale. She had already sensed the seriousness of the matter. Don't worry. Although we're only sage to be, Dijiang has the space divine power, and I have the time divine power. Yi Xian definitely can't catch us. When we get rid of him, we'll naturally find you, the Candle Jiuyin said in a deep voice. Why? Why did you lure him away? If we condense the real body of Pangu just now, Yi Xian would definitely not be a match for us, Zhu Rong said in surprise. Shut up. Suddenly, Hutu scolded coldly, it takes some time to condense the real body of Pangu. How can Yi Xian let us do as we please? I'm afraid that before we condense the real body of Pangu, Yi Xian will definitely kill us. Quickly take your people and leave, the Candle Jiuyin said quickly. The candle dragon quickly spoke, and his entire body started to dissipate as if he was going to disappear at any moment. However, This abhijna that could turn back time was simply too shocking. Rumble. The gate to the small world was opening. Huta knew that they could not delay any longer. If they waited until Yi Xian came back, the Wu tribe would definitely be annihilated. When the 12 ancestral Magus Mountains entered the small world, a large number of Wu tribe members poured in. Huta took one last look at the three realms. Although there was deep unwillingness in her eyes, she knew that she had to hide with the Wu tribe in order to avoid the annihilation brought by Yi Xian. Looking at the candle Jiuyin who was about to disappear, Huta said with a heavy expression, "You two take care. You must come back alive. If Dijiang and I die, the Wu tribe will never be born again." The candle Jiuyin's body completely collapsed. His voice rang in the ears of the entire Wu tribe. Buzz! The gate to the small world was closing. The entire Wu tribe disappeared from the three realms. This was something that Yi Xian did not expect. Yi Xian was indeed good at calculation, but he knew nothing about the way of time and space. This allowed the Wu tribe to escape by luck. The sky was heavy, and the world was vast. The candle Jiuyin and Dijiang strolled through the sky. Yi Xian followed behind them. He was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, he locked onto their qi to prevent them from escaping his control. Suddenly, the candle Jiuyin's body trembled. He nodded at Dijiang vaguely. His lips even moved slightly at this moment. Clearly, he was transmitting a message to Dijiang. Dijiang nodded slowly. He knew that the Wu tribe had already hidden in the small world that they had created. Time stop. Suddenly, the candle Jiuyin roared. The power of time rippled, and strands of silver light surrounded him. In an instant, it covered 1,000,000 miles of heaven and earth. Space freeze. At the same time, Dijiang roared. A terrifying white light flickered on the surface of his body. Then, it exploded with a loud bang, completely sealing off the space in the area. How dare you! Yi Xian roared coldly. He did not expect the two of them to dare to play tricks with him. This also made him attack violently. He directly restrained the two ancestral magi. Buzz! The world froze, and the space froze. Yi Xian's lightning-like body suddenly stopped. He seemed to have sunk into a swamp. An extremely terrifying and sticky mysterious power supported him, causing him to move as slowly as a snail. Chapter 976. The heavens and earth were silent. The heavens and earth within a radius of 1,000,000 miles fell into a state of stillness. That was the manifestation of the power of spacetime. It had truly frozen the world. Even the spiritual qi of heaven and earth was stagnant. The so-called law of heaven and earth was also dormant. The power of spacetime. Yi Xian's eyes shone with a terrifying divine light. He was completely suppressed by the power of spacetime, but his face was filled with excitement. This is the power that I want. This is the power that I want. Yi Xian said excitedly. He could not control himself. That also proved how excited he was. To be able to make Yi Xian unable to control his excitement, that also proved how shocked Yi Xian was. The heavens and earth were silent. Spacetime was still. Dijiang and the candle dragon were expressionless. They looked at Yi Xian indifferently. Yi Xian, although the two of us are no match for you, it's wishful thinking for you to kill the two of us, Dijiang said in a low voice. Actually, I sensed it 10,000 years ago. I even predicted what would happen in the future. I saw that you, Yi Xian, wanted to kill Dijiang and me. Although I don't know the reason, we were already prepared. How could we let you succeed? The candle dragon said coldly. The candle dragon was the ancestral sorcerer of time. He could predict the past. That was a manifestation of the power of time. Naturally, he could sense the danger that Yi Xian brought. At that moment, Yi Xian had completely calmed down. He stared at the two ancestral sorcerers gloomily, and a strange smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. It seems that the two of you already knew that I went to the sorcerer tribe. Yi Xian murmured. Di Jiang roared angrily. Time and space of the universe, and we can see through all things. In the three realms, only the two of us possess the power of time and space. Even saints are nothing to us. However, you, Yi Xian, have persecuted the shaman tribe time and time again. Although we possess the power of time and space, we don't have the cultivation to kill you. Yi Xian, I don't care what purpose you have for the two of us. You're currently trapped in this spacetime formation. It'll take you 100 years to break out of the formation. However, you'll never be able to find Di Jiang and me when you break out of the formation, the candle dragon sneered. Aren't you afraid that I'll exterminate the witch tribe? Yi Xian frowned. Ha! The candle dragon laughed hysterically as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. It's a pity that Di Jiang and I possess the power of time and space, but we're only sage to be cultivators. However, you're a brute who has achieved Tao in another way and even surpassed the heavenly path saint. The candle dragon said hatefully, since you know that I'm the ancestral sorcerer of time, you should know that I'm proficient in the way of time. After the two of us lured you away from the witch tribe, I've already used time backtracking to hide my people. It's impossible for you to find them even if you want to. Despicable man. Di Jiang scolded angrily, if you didn't threaten us with the witch tribe, how could you meet us? Unfortunately, you don't even have your last bargaining chip now. You're just a joke now. Hearing the two ancestral sorcerers' words, Yi Xian's face turned gloomy. He believed that the two of them were telling the truth. The witch tribe should have already hidden themselves. This was something that he did not expect. It was not that Yi Xian did not take this into consideration. He could only blame himself for not knowing the way of time and space. Otherwise, he would not have been so careless. However, Yi Xian was not disappointed because at this moment, Di Jiang and the candle dragon were right in front of him. As long as he could suppress the two of them, nothing would matter. Kill! Suddenly, Di Jiang and the candle dragon made a gesture with their hands. The time power and space power erupted and turned into terrifying saber lights that slashed towards Yi Xian. The sea turned to dust and time was like a saber. When the two ancestral sorcerers unleashed their divine powers, even a sage would be wary. Unfortunately, they were facing Yi Xian, a terrifying existence who had the cultivation of the heavenly Tao death calamity. Clang! Clang! Although the time power and space power were terrifying, they could not hurt Yi Xian at all. The grand skill that the two of them had condensed did not cause any harm to Yi Xian. Damn it! Di Jiang and the candle dragon looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. Although their divine powers were the time power and space power, their cultivation was only at the sage-to-be level after all. This was their biggest weakness. At this moment, Yi Xian's body was shaking violently. His cultivation was rising to the extreme, causing the still heaven and earth to start flowing. Although he was not well versed in the space-time power, he walked the path of using strength to prove his Tao. As the saying went, strength can break all techniques. He could only break the space-time formation with brute force. Yi Xian, it's useless. If you want to break this formation, you'll need 100 years, crack. Di Jiang sneered. However, before he could finish his sentence, a strange sound suddenly came from the spacetime formation. The spacetime power that supported heaven and earth was gradually cracking. How is this possible? The candle dragon roared in shock. He could not believe his eyes. This was the spacetime formation that the two of them had created together. How could it start to collapse? Not good, we've underestimated him too much. This Yi Xian's cultivation far surpasses ours. Even if we have the power of time and space, we won't be able to trap him for too long. Di Jiang instantly came to a realization and directly revealed a terrifying truth. Let's go. Don't wait for him to break the formation. Otherwise, we'll be in big trouble. Di Jiang called out to the candle dragon. Both of them saw the heavy look in each other's eyes. Then, they disappeared on the spot. Obviously, if they waited for Yi Xian to break out of the formation, both of them would definitely be in trouble. They could not afford to take the risk. Trying to escape. Yi Xian was in the middle of the space-time formation. His face was ferocious and distorted. Waves of black saint energy burst out, causing the entire space-time formation to rumble and shake. Cracks began to appear. Break. Strength can break all techniques. Heaven and earth could collapse. Yi Xian roared into the sky as a destructive power burst out from his body. Following the sound of an explosion, the space-time formation that Di Jiang and the candle dragon had set up together shattered. Yi Xian soared into the sky as chaotic fog surrounded his body. His eyes were cold and gloomy as he looked around. Obviously, he was looking for the two ancestral sorcerers. It had to be said that the space-time energy was indeed mysterious and terrifying. Even Yi Xian had a lingering fear. If it were not for the two ancestral sorcerers' weak cultivation, Yi Xian would have suffered a great loss today. Yi Xian was very sure that if the two ancestral sorcerers had the cultivation of a saint like him, he would not be a match for the two ancestral sorcerers. Fortunately, the two of them were only sage-to-be. It was a blessing in disguise. I knew that you're not that simple. Do you think that I don't have any other tricks up my sleeve? Yi Xian smiled strangely. He formed a seal with both of his hands and a 3-inch black paper crane condensed. As the black paper crane flew to the south, Yi Xian immediately followed the black paper crane and chased after it. Spirit drawing technique. It was an extremely useless technique in the Immortal scripture. It had no other use except to lock onto a person's trace and find out their location. When Di Jiang and the candle dragon appeared, Yi Xian secretly performed the spirit drawing technique on them. The reason why this technique was useless was that if Yi Xian wanted to find a person, he could find the target based on the other person's aura. Naturally, this technique had no effect on him. However, it just so happened that the candle dragon and Di Jiang had the power of time and space, so Yi Xian was unable to sense their auras. This spirit drawing technique just so happened to restrain the two great ancestral shamans, allowing Yi Xian to know their whereabouts. Rumble. The sky shook and the universe shifted. Yi Xian moved freely in the sky. He followed the black paper crane and chased after the two ancestral sorcerers. Chapter 977. Yi Xian shuttled through the air, and streams of light turned into shadows as he moved through the endless sky. Every step he took covered a distance of millions of kilometers, and wherever he went, the world would rumble, causing an extremely terrifying commotion. So fast. The black paper crane flew in front of Yi Xian. His eyes were as gloomy as water, and he was extremely surprised. This was because, in his perception, the speed of Di Jiang and the candle dragon had actually surpassed his. Although he knew their location, he was unable to catch up to the two ancestral shamans. Yi Xian was not boasting. With his current cultivation of the 4 tribulations of the heavenly way, he could definitely be called the world's fastest. However, he could not stop chasing after the two ancestral sorcerers. Let's see how you escape. Yi Xian whispered in a hoarse voice. His eyes were filled with violence. He would never let them go because he had to devour their space-time power. Rumble. Yi Xian's cultivation was fully released. His cultivation of the 4 tribulations of the heavenly way was raised to the peak. His speed increased again, and he chased after the two ancestral sorcerers with a terrifying aura. At the same time, Di Jiang and the candle dragon were traveling together. One of them was the ancestral sorcerer of time, while the other was the ancestral sorcerer of space. These two powers that surpassed the great way of heaven and earth allowed them to travel through time and space. Of course, the so-called time and space was just a general name. However, Dijiang had the space magic that could tear through layers of barriers. He called this technique space speed. The candle dragon had the time magic. He could use time to travel through space. With the two of them working together, their speed could be said to be the best in the three realms. In terms of the world's fastest speed, only the space-time power could be said to be the best. Other techniques could not be compared to it at all. This was also the reason why the Heavenly Way Saints could not do anything to the two ancestral sorcerers. It was also the reason why Yi Xian could not catch up with them. He's catching up. The candle dragon's expression changed drastically because the aura that came from behind the two of them was too terrifying, causing their souls to tremble. Yi Xian's cultivation is much higher than yours and mine. Even the space-time formation was broken by him in an instant. You and I are definitely not his match, but he can forget about catching up with us. Go! Dijiang growled coldly. He directly tore open the space in front of him. The two of them instantly entered the cracked space. When they reappeared, they were already hundreds of millions of miles away. The energy of space was terrifying as expected, and it was simply unimaginable. Traversing a distance of 1 trillion kilometers in an instant was something that no one in the three dimensions could accomplish. Rumble. Yi Xian suddenly appeared at the spot where the two of them had just appeared. The space around them had been shattered by him. Unfortunately, the two of them had still managed to escape. The power of space-time is indeed extraordinary. Yi Xian muttered coldly. A trace of unwillingness flashed through his eyes, but there was also a faint trace of madness. Dijiang and the candle dragon were only sage to be. If it were not for the power of time and space, Yi Xian could have suppressed them in an instant. From this, it could be seen that the two grand sorcerers were merely sage to be. However, they were able to render Yi Xian helpless because of the power of time and space. This also proved that the power of time and space was too extraordinary. At this moment, Yi Xian once again lost track of the two of them. However, he was not disappointed because he had already planted the spirit attraction technique on the two of them. Even if the two grand sorcerers escaped to the ends of the earth, he would still be able to find them. Change. Yi Xian made a gesture with both hands to change the void. A black paper crane danced in the void. After 3 breaths, it shot toward the north. In the north? Yi Xian smiled ferociously. He took a step forward and disappeared. How is this possible? How is this possible? The North Sea glacier stretched as far as the eye could see. The two grand sorcerers were fleeing in panic. A terrifying dark figure was chasing and intercepting the two of them. This made the two grand sorcerers tremble and roar. Space shuttled, time accelerated, and the two ancestral magi fled in a sorry state. Their faces were pale and bloodless. They originally thought that they'd gotten rid of Yi Xian, but in a short 3 days, Yi Xian found them again. Trying to escape. Do you think you can escape? Yi Xian's cultivation had reached the peak. Although he did not have the speed of the two grand sorcerers, his cultivation was much higher than theirs. He also had endless energy. It was wishful thinking for the two of them to escape from his control. No, there must be something wrong. I can't sense your aura. He must have done something to our bodies. The candle dragon whispered in horror. Be careful. Dijiang shouted in panic. Yi Xian slapped at him from millions of miles away. Dijiang used his spatial magic to isolate this part of the world. He pulled the candle dragon and disappeared. Rumble. The sky shook and the void was in chaos. A chase began in the 3 realms. From the sky to the ground, from the deep sea to the starry sky. The two grand sorcerers used all means to get rid of Yi Xian. Unfortunately, every time the two of them thought that they'd gotten rid of Yi Xian would appear again in less than a day or 2. It simply caused their hearts to shatter, and they even felt a sense of despair. This chase lasted for 1,000 years. The entire three realms were shaken. The celestial court sent out the clairvoyant and the clairaudient to investigate. Several heavenly sages even opened their dharma eyes of heaven and earth to spy on them. Unfortunately, Yi Xian's cultivation was too strong. He had already concealed the secrets of heaven. Moreover, the two grand sorcerers had the power of time and space. Even the heavenly sages could not spy on what happened between the three of them. Another 1,000 years passed. The two grand sorcerers looked dispirited. The power of time and space around them was extremely weak. However, they were still trying their best to hide from Yi Xian's pursuit. After 2,000 years of escape, the two grand sorcerers only had the cultivation of sage to be. Although they had the divine sense of time and space, their cultivation was still there. How could they withstand such a huge consumption? On the other hand, Yi Xian was different. His cultivation was already Tongtian. A mere 2,000 years did not affect him at all. Instead, he was still chasing after the two grand sorcerers. No, if this goes on, you and I will not be suppressed by Yi Xian. I'm afraid we will die of exhaustion sooner or later. Outside the 33rd layer of heaven, the stars were rotating. The two ancestors of sorcerers were fleeing for their lives. Dijiang's face was pale, and the power of space around him was extremely scattered. The candle dragon was not much better. Yi Xian definitely has a secret technique to track you and me. Now we can only act separately and remove the secret technique he planted on us. Perhaps we can still escape. The candle dragon spoke quickly. Yi Xian's terrifying aura came from behind them again. Obviously, Yi Xian had found them again. After 2,000 years of escape, the two grand sorcerers had already understood that Yi Xian must have planted some kind of secret technique on them. Otherwise, Yi Xian would not have found them so quickly. Only when they separated and had a chance to catch their breath could they remove the secret technique that Yi Xian planted on them. Okay, you split up and act separately. We will meet again after we shake off Yi Xian. Dijiang agreed and headed directly to the Nanzhan department continent in the mortal world. The candle dragon and Dijiang ran in the opposite direction and headed to the north continent. Rumble. The starry sky was turbulent. Stars fell. The two had just separated when Yi Xian arrived. However, the two grand sorcerers had already disappeared. They separated? Yi Xian frowned. Through the spirit guiding skill, he sensed that the two grand sorcerers were fleeing in different directions. This also made Yi Xian not know which one of them to pursue first. Fortunately, Yi Xian did not hesitate for long. After 3 breaths, he made a decision and directly chased after Dijiang. Chapter 978. Earth Immortal Realm, Nanzhan Province Continent. The Nanzhan Province continent was one of the 4 major continents. There were many sects in the boundless expanse. Many sects fought for their orthodoxies, including Taoism, Buddhism, fiendish sects, and other sections. It could be said that the Nanzhan Province continent was the most chaotic continent after the North Continent. It was also a paradise for the fiendish sects. Bloody fights broke out from time to time, and the human race was also in deep trouble. Ever since Nuwa destroyed the human race's fate, the human race had quietly changed. Although the human race was weak in the past, they could still stay out of the conflict between orthodoxies. However, the human race had now joined the orthodoxies of various sizes and were in daily fights. Fate was a mysterious concept, but it really existed. The future of the human race was extremely worrying. It was just that it had not been revealed yet. Mystic Fire City covered an area of 1,000,000 miles. It was a human city. The city lord, Daoist Xuanhua, was a golden immortal. Under his rule, Mystic Fire City was considered peaceful and prosperous. This was rare in the Nanzhan Province continent. However, something big happened in Mystic Fire City today. It was something big enough to destroy Mystic Fire City. A meteor first fell from the sky, directly blasting Mystic Fire City into two halves. Countless humans died tragically in the aftermath of the explosion. Just as Mystic Fire City was about to investigate what had happened, an extremely terrifying figure descended on Mystic Fire City. In an instant, it sealed off the entire Mystic Fire City. No one could escape from the city. May I know which exalted immortal is controlling Mystic Fire City? Taoist Xuanhua hurried over with a group of disciples. He saw a figure standing in the sky above Mystic Fire City. Just the light radiating from the figure was enough to make Taoist Xuanhua's heart skip a beat. His primordial spirit felt like it was about to shatter. Yi Xian was dressed in black, and 3,000 strands of black hair hung behind his head. His hair fluttered in the wind as the violent winds howled. His eyes were like lightning as he looked down at the profound fire city below him, and strands of chaotic fog filled the air. You actually hid in a human city. But do you think you can escape like this? Yi Xian muttered to himself. His eyes were extremely gloomy. Although the soul channeling technique could track Dijiang's whereabouts, it was only an approximate range. There were tens of millions of living beings in this human city. Yi Xian wanted to find Dijiang was like finding a needle in a haystack. Exalted Immortal, who are you? Exalted Immortal. Taoist Xuanhua trembled as he asked from afar. He merely glanced at Yi Xian, and his primordial spirit trembled to the extreme. An extremely terrifying feeling arose in his heart. Daluo. Daluo, it must be Daluo. Taoist Xuanhua's cultivation. He Taoist Xuanhua was certain was, Taoist was, Daluo, or Taoist Xuanhua. Today. To time, Xuanhua's S. Was to Taoist was. Taoist. Unfortunately, Yi Xian chose to ignore Taoist Xuanhua. All his attention was on Dijiang. How could he have time to deal with a mere golden immortal? Dijiang, as long as you obediently surrender, I will not make things difficult for you. Yi Xian's voice echoed in the entire Xuanhua city. All the living beings in the city looked at him, but Dijiang did not respond. Dijiang? Who is Dijiang? Taoist Xuanhua whispered in fear. His disciple's expression changed greatly, as if he had heard something terrible. Master, isn't there an ancestral sorcerer called Dijiang among the 12 ancestors of sorcerers? Are you kidding me? How is that possible? Taoist Xuanhua's expression changed greatly. His entire body trembled. He could not believe what he had just heard. Who was Dijiang? Dijiang was one of the 12 ancestors of sorcery from ancient times, and a figure at the peak of the sage to be. If Dijiang was hiding in his Xuanhua city, then what kind of terrifying existence would this self-proclaimed emperor be? Taoist Xuanhua dared not imagine it. He could not imagine it. If even Dijiang was being hunted down by this person, then his identity was simply unimaginably terrifying. In Xuanhua city, Dijiang was hiding in an ordinary house. His space magic had completely covered him, so that his aura would not leak out. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. He was using his space magic to search for the spirit drawing art that Yi Xian had planted. Found it. Suddenly, Dijiang was excited. He had finally found the spirit drawing art that Yi Xian had planted. This also allowed him to quickly activate his cultivation and begin to refine it. As long as he could refine the spirit drawing art, he could completely escape Yi Xian's pursuit. By then, it would be more difficult for Yi Xian to find him. In the sky above Xuanhua city, Yi Xian's expression suddenly changed because the black paper crane in front of him began to fade. This meant that Dijiang was refining the spirit drawing art that he had planted. Not good. Yi Xian growled. He would never allow this to happen. Otherwise, he would fail on the verge of success. Dijiang, do you think that I won't be able to find you if you hide in a human city? Yi Xian sneered. His face gradually became ferocious and sinister. The aura of ruthlessness and desiredness around him rose terrifyingly. As the saying went, a general success was built on thousands of bones. Only by stepping on piles of bones could one climb to the top of the 9 heavens. Yi Xian understood this very well. Yi Xian's palm held up the sky. The world within thousands of miles was shaking. A giant palm that covered the sky condensed and directly appeared in the sky, enveloping the entire Xuanhua city. The 6 desires are ruthless, and the world is heartless. Kill! Yi Xian roared mercilessly. The giant palm that covered the sky crashed down on Xuanhua city. This palm had the power to bury all things. No one could survive this attack. No! Taoist Xuanhua and his disciples roared in grief at this scene. If this attack really landed, the entire Xuanhua city would be turned into ashes. All the living beings in the city would also die. Unfortunately, no one could change Yi Xian's will. If he failed to massacre the city today, Dijiang would escape from his hands. He would never allow this to happen. Rumble. Xuanhua city was collapsing, turning into ashes. All the living beings in the city exploded into clouds of blood mist. A 1,000,000-mile palm print appeared on the ground. The blood mist filled the sky. Yi Xian's attack had killed thousands of living beings. Among them were not only human cultivators but also many mortals. It could be said that this was an endless massacre. Boom! Suddenly, a silver light shot up into the sky. Dijiang was bathed in blood. It was obvious that he had been severely injured by this attack. He did not even look back and wanted to escape. Unfortunately, Yi Xian was prepared. How could he let him escape so easily? Seal. The world in all directions fluctuated. Black saint energy turned into chains and instantly entangled Dijiang. Yi Xian appeared in front of him in an instant. He pointed at Dijiang's forehead and restrained him. Yi Xian. You're so cruel. Dijiang panicked when he was suppressed by Yi Xian. He even shouted angrily at Yi Xian. He had never thought that Yi Xian would commit such an endless massacre in order to capture him. Chapter 979. To think that you would be so ruthless as a fellow human. Aren't you afraid of karma causing you to suffer an unparalleled calamity in the future? Dijiang yelled out in shock. Dijiang had never expected Yi Xian to be this vicious. To think that he would be so heartless as to destroy the entire Mystic Fire City. After all, everyone in the Mystic Fire City was from the human race. Dijiang's plan was great. If he were to hide in the city of the human race, Yi Xian would definitely hold back. That would give him ample time to cultivate the spirit attraction skill as well. However, he had miscalculated. On the path to the peak of the 9 heavens, Yi Xian would not show any mercy. Even if he were to destroy an entire city of the human race, he would not hesitate in the slightest. Human race? Yi Xian replied indifferently, the human race of the Earth Immortal world has nothing to do with me. My ancestral ground is not in the Earth Immortal world. What? The moment Dijiang heard this, he was stunned. He had yet to comprehend the chilliness in Yi Xian's words. As for Yi Xian, there was no way he would explain it to Dijiang. After all, Dijiang was already a dead man in his eyes. You! How dare you massacre a city? You! Dao Master Xuanhua's face was pale as he yelled out from afar. The way he looked at Yi Xian was filled with fear and anger. He was the city lord of Mystic Fire City. Now that Mystic Fire City was destroyed, he had an undeniable responsibility. Furthermore, Mystic Fire City was under the control of the Tai Immortal sect. If the Tai Immortal sect were to pursue this matter, he would definitely die. Noisy. Yi Xian didn't even look at Daoist Xuanhua as he spat out these 2 words. The entire space around him was destroyed, and Daoist Xuanhua and his disciples were annihilated. Not even their primordial spirits were left behind. Transform. After killing Daoist Yi Xian, the entire Mystic Fire City was wiped out. Not a single living being had ever seen Yi Xian again. Meanwhile, Yi Xian waved his hand and created a sky-blotting water screen, directly wiping out everything within a radius of 1,000,000 miles without leaving behind any aura. Yi Xian did not kill people for no reason. Everything he did was to cover himself. If he had kept Daoist Xuanhua alive, those heavenly Dao saints would have been able to find out through Daoist Xuanhua's memories that he had hunted down Di Jiang. Yi Xian wouldn't leave any hidden dangers for himself. Although the heavenly Dao saint was no longer a threat to him, it was better to be careful than to sail a boat for 10,000 years. It was always right to be cautious. Rumble. Yi Xian brought Di Jiang with him and instantly disappeared from the spot. In less than half an incense stick of time, a few heavenly Dao saint secrets quietly descended onto this area. It was obvious that they were the methods of the heavenly Dao saints. Unfortunately, these strands of heavenly Dao saint secrets did not yield any results as Yi Xian had already turned the area into a vacuum. This also caused the strands of heavenly Dao saint secrets to return empty-handed. On a nameless mountain in the Nanzhan section continent. Green mountains and clear waters, willow trees swayed gently. Halfway up the mountain, there was a broken cave. At this moment, a shrill and angry curse could be heard. Yi Xian, you bastard! What do you want to do to me? Di Jiang was limp at Yi Xian's feet like a dead dog. At this moment, all of his cultivation was sealed and he could not use his spatial powers. His eyes were filled with great despair, but he still cursed Yi Xian. What do I want to do? Yi Xian smiled. His smile was very sincere, but his eyes were extremely hot as he looked at Di Jiang, as if he was looking at a rare treasure. Do you know how many years I have been looking for you and the candle dragon? Yi Xian did not immediately use the tribulation transcender's devour on Di Jiang. There was a faint sense of desolation around him, and his eyes were faintly red. Yi Xian, Di Jiang and I are only sage-to-be cultivators, and you have achieved the Tao in another way. The two of us are no threat to you at all. My Wu tribe also avoids you. Why do you have to kill us? Di Jiang roared unwillingly. Obviously, Di Jiang thought that Yi Xian had been chasing him and the candle dragon because he saw them as a threat and wanted to destroy the entire Wu tribe in one fell swoop. Kill us? No, no, no. Yi Xian shook his head and said, the so-called Wu tribe is just an ant in my eyes. I don't even care about Hutu. I'm not so bored as to target your Wu tribe. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Di Jiang was stunned, and his eyes were filled with confusion. He was a little confused. Since Yi Xian did not want to destroy the Wu tribe, why did he force him and the candle dragon? Actually, I haven't had a good talk with someone for a long time. Before you die, I'll tell you everything. Yi Xian finally calmed down. His eyes were a little absent-minded, and his aura was slightly lonely and bleak. Actually, the three realms of heaven, earth, and man are just a cage. There is a very, very big world outside. You and I are just prisoners in this cage. You can even say that we are frogs in a well. The power of karma, the power of nirvana, the power of destiny, the power of chaos, and the power of time and space that I yearn for day and night. Yi Xian whispered in a hoarse voice, falling into an indescribable state. The power of time. The power of space. Di Jiang murmured to himself. His face gradually turned pale, as if he had vaguely understood Yi Xian's true goal. That's right. The power of time and space. Yi Xian nodded and said, in the three realms of heaven, earth, and man, only you and the candle dragon have the power of time and space. These are your innate powers. Unfortunately, the two of you can't cultivate these two powers that surpass the great Tao of heaven and earth on your own. This is simply a waste of natural resources, Yi Xian sighed. You want to control the power of time and space? Yi Xian had already made it so clear. If Di Jiang still did not understand Yi Xian's goal, he would scold himself for being an idiot. You're both right and wrong. Yi Xian shook his head slightly. His eyes were in a trance as he said, I do want to control the power of time and space. However, the two of you don't have these two powers. These are only your innate powers. The true power of time and space can reverse the river of time and travel between the past and the future. That's the true power of time and space. The two of you haven't even touched the surface, Yi Xian said with a hint of mockery. Clearly, Yi Xian had understood one thing during the 2,000 years of pursuit. Di Jiang and the Candle Dragon had not even touched the surface of the power of time and space. They had only relied on their innate powers. In Yi Xian's opinion, this was simply a waste of natural resources. Of course, Yi Xian also understood that it wasn't that Di Jiang and the Candle Dragon didn't want to cultivate these two powers, but that their innate divine abilities were innate divine abilities. This was something that they were born with, and there was no such thing as a cultivation path. What a joke. Even if you want to control the power of time and space, do you think you can obtain my space just by killing me? Just as Di Jiang was mocking him, his words came to an abrupt halt. He froze on the spot as if he had been struck by lightning. It was as if he had thought of something extremely terrifying at this moment. I mean, you. Di Jiang's teeth were chattering as he looked at Yi Xian with an expression of extreme fear. This was because he'd guessed an extremely terrifying thing. Chapter 980. It seems that you have guessed it. Yi Xian smiled. His white teeth were extremely dazzling, but when Di Jiang saw them, his body and mind trembled. You stole our innate magical abilities? Di Jiang screamed in horror. Congratulations, you got it right. Yi Xian's smile disappeared and turned into a cruel and ferocious expression. As your reward, I will give you a quick death. Tribulation Transcenders devour. Rumble. Yi Xian made a hand seal with both hands, and a series of gloomy and strange seals appeared in his hands. His whole body turned into a terrifying black fog and instantly swallowed Di Jiang. No! Di Jiang screamed miserably. Unfortunately, under the heaven-defying technique of the Tribulation Transcender Devour, his body began to collapse. Wisps of black smoke rippled out from his body, and he constantly screamed in pain. After swallowing you, I will be able to master the power of space. This will be your greatest honor. Yi Xian laughed cruelly, and his whole body fell into extreme excitement. Yi Xian, you won't have a good death. Even if my soul disperses today, you'll definitely die without a burial ground in the future, Di Jiang cursed bitterly before he died, and then no sound came out. Only the black fog that Yi Xian had turned into rippling in this cave. At the same time, far away in the ancestral land of the Wu tribe in the small world, Hutu was sitting cross-legged in the ancestor sorcerer temple of Di Jiang with the 9 ancestors of sorcerer. With a loud bang, the statue of ancestor sorcerer of Di Jiang collapsed. Di Jiang is dead. Hutu clenched her fists, her eyes gradually turned red, and a drop of tears dripped from her eyes. Yi Xian, our witch race is absolutely irreconcilable with you. If we don't kill you, how can we face our dead clansmen? The 9 ancestral witches roared angrily. Di Jiang's death made them angry and heartbroken. Their hatred for Yi Xian had reached the extreme. Look! Suddenly, Jerome pointed at the broken statue of Di Jiang in surprise. This also made Hutu and the others temporarily calm down and look at the broken statue of Di Jiang. Panga blood essence. Di Jiang's Panga blood essence. When Hutu saw the drop of dark red blood floating in Di Jiang's statue, she was first stunned, and then extremely excited laughter came from her mouth. I see. Di Jiang left his Panga blood in his statue. Did he foresee this calamity long ago? Hutu Rong said excitedly. In fact, when Di Jiang and the Candle Dragon returned to the sorcerer tribe, they had left their Panga's blood essence in their respective statues. They were afraid that something bad would happen to them and the Pangu's blood essence would fall into Yi Xian's hands. However, Dijiang did not expect that he would really die, and his Pangu blood essence would become the last hope of the Wu tribe. Quick, go to the Candle Dragon's divine temple. Hutu seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly called the 9 ancestral witches to go to the ancestral witch temple where the Candle Dragon was. Although Hutu did not want the Candle Dragon to be killed by Yi Xian, now that Dijiang was dead, the Candle Dragon should be in great danger. The only thing they could do was to stay in the ancestral witch temple and wait for the final result. Nothing could happen to the Pangu's blood essence, because it was the key to condensing the real body of Pangu, and also the last hope of the Wu tribe. In the middle of the nameless mountain, Yi Xian sat cross-legged, and a silver light appeared around him. This silver light was mysterious and deep, giving people a feeling of ethereal spirituality. It also made people feel like they were looking at flowers in the fog. The faintly discernible power of space was extremely thin and difficult to detect, but it really existed. At this moment, it was flowing around Yi Xian's body. 1,000 years. A full 1,000 years. Yi Xian had refined it for a full 1,000 years before he completely took over Dijiang's spatial magical ability. Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. His pupils had turned silver white, and they were like ancient stars that were rotating slightly. The surrounding space collapsed inch by inch, and this terrifying fluctuation continuously spread out in all directions, instantly turning the nameless mountain he was on into nothingness. Nothing remained, and the world became a vacuum. This was the power of space. Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the space crack and slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. The silver light around his body quietly dissipated, and the surrounding space cracks gradually calmed down until the world became clear again. Sure enough. Yi Xian sighed, and a touch of disappointment appeared in his eyes. He had used the Tribulation Transcender's Devour to devour Dijiang's innate magical ability, and had grasped the basics of spatial magical ability. However, a magical ability was a magical ability, and this was not the power of space. It was just a prototype of the power of space. Although there was only a difference of 2 words between the two, the gap between them was like the difference between heaven and earth. The power of space could shuttle through the universe, and it could even ignore the obstruction of any barrier. The spatial magical ability was just Dijiang's innate magical ability, and it could not even be considered as the tip of the iceberg of the power of space. However, Yi Xian was not too disappointed because he had already expected this result. The only function of the Tribulation Transcender's Devour was to devour the innate magical ability of others. It was normal that he had obtained the spatial magical ability from Dijiang. However, Yi Xian was different from Dijiang. Yi Xian did not turn Dijiang's innate magical ability into his own. Instead, he refined it into a space seed and planted it in his body. This was because Yi Xian was very clear about one thing. What he wanted was not the spatial magical ability, but the power of space. Only by refining Dijiang's spatial magical ability into a space seed could he cultivate the true power of space. The seed had been planted, but whether it could take root and sprout depended on Yi Xian's cultivation. As for how to cultivate the power of space, Yi Xian also had a vague direction. However, what Yi Xian wanted to do now was not to study the power of space. He had more important things to do. The Candle Dragon. Yes, it was the Candle Dragon. He had just devoured Dijiang's innate magical ability, and he had not found the Candle Dragon yet. He had to find the Candle Dragon as soon as possible and devour the other party's time innate skill. This was the most important thing. Buzz. Yi Xian made a gesture with both hands, and the spirit attraction technique rippled slightly, but the black paper crane did not appear. Obviously, the Candle Dragon had refined the spirit attraction technique in the past 1,000 years. Sure enough. Yi Xian waved his hand to disperse the spirit attraction technique. There was no disappointment on his face, as if he had expected this result. Yi Xian's intelligence was outstanding. How could he not know that the Candle Dragon had refined the spirit attraction technique? After all, 1,000 years had passed, and the candle dragon had the time to do so. However, Yi Xian naturally had his own way. Change. Suddenly, Yi Xian made a gesture with both hands, and his entire body was covered by the black fog. In less than 3 breaths, the black fog slowly dissipated, and he turned into Dijiang with a smile on his face. Regardless of height, appearance, or even the aura on his body, Yi Xian was exactly the same as Dijiang. There was no difference at all. A wisp of silver light flickered around him, and the surrounding space faded slightly. At this moment, Yi Xian was Dijiang. Even if Yi Xian stood in front of the 12 ancient witches, they would not be able to see through Yi Xian's real body. After devouring Dijiang's innate magical ability, Yi Xian naturally knew all of Dijiang's spatial techniques and memories, so he naturally knew how to contact the candle dragon. Everything was within Yi Xian's plan. Although the spirit attraction technique had lost its effect, he had thought of this when he was chasing Dijiang back then. Fortunately, everything was under his control. Candle dragon, you're the only one left now. Do you think you can escape? Yi Xian smiled eerily. He flicked a silver light out of his finger, and directly tore the space apart and disappeared. Clearly, this was the way to contact the candle dragon, and he only needed to wait for the candle dragon's reply. Chapter 981. Sumeru Fairyland. Sumeru Fairyland was a miniature world isolated from the 3 realms. It was also the dojo of the ancestral wizard of time, the candle dragon. Ever since he separated from Dijiang and escaped from Yi Xian's pursuit, he had returned to Sumeru Fairyland. After 1,000 years, the candle dragon had finally refined the spirit attraction technique on his body. He hid in the Sumeru Immortal realm and waited for Dijiang to contact him. He was even faintly worried that Dijiang would be able to escape Yi Xian's pursuit. He sat with his legs crossed and breathed. As the candle dragon breathed, his body became illusory. His time ability lingered around him, but he was anxious that he breathed out a mouthful of murky air, and his time ability calmed down. The candle dragon slowly opened his eyes as a silver light suddenly appeared in front of him. Great! The candle dragon was delighted. He sensed that Dijiang was calling him, and he knew that he had escaped from Yi Xian's pursuit. Come to Sumeru Fairyland quickly. The candle dragon quickly formed a seal, and a white light was flicked out of his finger. It was obvious that he was telling Yi Xian where he was. When the candle dragon was done, he finally felt relieved. He was glad that he and Dijiang had escaped from this life and death crisis. Suddenly, the candle dragon was stunned. His eyelids were twitching rapidly, and he suddenly felt that his mind was trembling. An extremely bad feeling appeared in his heart. Something's not right. The candle dragon had an extraordinary sense of danger. As he was the ancestral wizard of time, he was extremely sensitive to the future and the past. Death calamity, it's a supreme death calamity. The candle dragon's face was pale as he muttered in horror. He became restless. Dijiang and I have already escaped from Yi Xian's pursuit. How can there be a death calamity? The candle dragon looked extremely solemn. He could not believe his senses. As the ancestral wizard of time, the candle dragon's sense of danger was better than anyone else's. Although he could not travel between the past and the future, he had an extraordinary sense of what was about to happen. Dijiang, it's Dijiang. All of a sudden, the candle dragon's expression changed drastically. He was originally fine, but just as he sent a signal to Dijiang, he was met with an unparalleled death. This must have something to do with Dijiang. Time acceleration. The candle dragon's face was grim and anxious. He suddenly let out a low roar and unleashed his time divine ability to its maximum. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Clearly, he wanted to see what would happen in the future, even if it meant damaging his own cultivation base. Prying into the future was something that defied the heavens. Even if he was the Time Grand Wizard, he couldn't do it rashly. Otherwise, he would surely suffer the backlash of the time energy and the merciless suppression of the heavenly Tao. Fortunately, the Candle Dragon was the Time Grand Wizard, and his innate divine ability was the Time Divine ability. At this moment, when he used time acceleration, the surrounding time seemed to be speeding up, and scenes appeared in his eyes. Wang! Someone came to the Penglai deity realm alone. It was Dijiang, who was as close as a brother to him. Just as the Candle Dragon was excitedly chatting with Dijiang, Dijiang suppressed him with one palm. Then, Dijiang turned into a terrifying black fog and swallowed the Candle Dragon. Ah! The Candle Dragon screamed and suddenly woke up from time acceleration. Only then did he realize that what he had experienced was an illusion, and Dijiang wasn't around. Why? Why does he want to kill me? The Candle Dragon whispered in horror. He was completely stunned. Everything that he had experienced just now seemed to have happened to him. This made the Candle Dragon's body and mind tremble uncontrollably. Go quickly. We can't meet Dijiang. The Candle Dragon didn't know why Dijiang wanted to kill him, nor did he know why Dijiang turned into a strange black fog and swallowed him. However, he trusted his time divine ability very much because what he had seen just now was what was going to happen in the future. Wang! The Candle Dragon didn't delay at all. He was about to tear the Sumeru deity realm apart and leave this place. However, before he could move, a figure suddenly entered the Sumeru deity realm and stopped him. Where are you going? Dijiang asked with a slightly stunned expression. Dijiang? The Candle Dragon's face was ghastly pale, and his eyes were filled with panic. He quickly retreated and unleashed his time divine ability to prevent Dijiang from attacking him. Candle Dragon, what are you doing? Dijiang looked confused. He was completely confused. Dijiang, where's Yi Xian? The Candle Dragon couldn't forget what he had seen in time acceleration. He stared at Dijiang gloomily and asked about Yi Xian's whereabouts. Listen to me slowly. Fortunately, I hid in the human city and refined the secret skill that he planted in me. That's how I managed to escape from him. Dijiang spoke tirelessly about the course of events, but a wisp of imperceptible surprise flashed past the depths of his eyes. Of course, Dijiang had already been devoured by Yi Xian. The person in front of him was naturally Yi Xian. When he received the Candle Dragon's reply, he immediately rushed to the Sumeru deity realm. But now, the Candle Dragon acted as if he was facing a great enemy. This caused Yi Xian to be secretly surprised. Could it be that he'd seen through his true body? Impossible, that's definitely impossible. At that moment, it was impossible for there to be any flaws when he transformed into Dijiang. After all, he had already devoured Dijiang's talent divine ability. At that moment, regardless of whether it was his appearance or the spatial aura that he released, he was exactly the same as Dijiang. However, Yi Xian was confused. Why is the Candle Dragon so vigilant when he sees me? Moreover, he looks as if I'm going to attack him. Could it be the time divine ability? Suddenly, Yi Xian thought of a great possibility. That was the Candle Dragon's time divine ability. This was the only explanation that made sense. At that moment, the Candle Dragon was listening to Yi Xian's narration. However, he kept looking at Yi Xian. It was obvious that he was trying to see if this Dijiang in front of him was Yi Xian. Unfortunately, the Candle Dragon was disappointed in the end. The Dijiang in front of him was exactly the same as the Dijiang that he was familiar with. Regardless of whether it was his expression or the spatial aura that was rippling around him, there was no difference. Let me ask you. Back then, we had calculated Yi Xian's origin together. What was the conclusion that we reached in the end? The Candle Dragon couldn't forget what he had experienced in time acceleration. This made him quickly ask Yi Xian about it. He's not from the Earth Immortal realm, Yi Xian answered quickly. Back then, Yi Xian killed the people from the sorcerer tribe. Back then, we worked together to calculate Yi Xian's past. However, all we got was a fog. The only person that we couldn't calculate with our time divine ability was Yi Xian. Therefore, back then, we concluded that he wasn't from the Earth Immortal realm. Yi Xian explained in detail. As he had devoured Dijiang's talent divine ability, he naturally knew Dijiang's memory. Therefore, he was not afraid of the Candle Dragon's question at all. It's really you. Hearing Yi Xian's answer, the Candle Dragon heaved a sigh of relief. He knew that the Dijiang in front of him was real. However, the sense of danger in his heart had not dissipated. Therefore, he didn't dare to be careless. Dijiang, do you know what I saw when I performed time acceleration? The Candle Dragon thought about it and looked at Yi Xian solemnly. Chapter 982. What did you see? Yi Xian asked curiously. I saw you suppressing me and transforming into a ball of strange black fog that drowned me. I turned into ashes and died in an extremely miserable manner, the Candle Dragon muttered in horror. What a time ability. Yi Xian looked calm on the surface when he heard what the Candle Dragon said. However, he was extremely shocked on the inside. He did not expect the time ability to be so terrifying that the Candle Dragon could predict that he was going to kill him. Are you kidding me? We're like brothers. Why would I kill you? Yi Xian pretended to be angry and walked towards the Candle Dragon. Stop right there. The Candle Dragon suddenly roared as his time ability exploded forth. He continuously retreated backwards, maintaining a safe distance from Yi Xian the entire time. Candle Dragon, what are you doing? Yi Xian frowned and pretended to be unhappy. Dijiang, although I see you as my brother, I believe in my time ability more. Don't take another step forward. Otherwise, I'll leave this place immediately, the Candle Dragon growled. At this moment, Yi Xian's brows were tightly knitted together. It wasn't that he didn't want to suppress the Candle Dragon, but that the Candle Dragon was already on guard. If he were to act rashly, the Candle Dragon would definitely activate his time ability to escape. At that time, it would be even more difficult for him to find the Candle Dragon. Yi Xian valued Dijiang's space ability very much. However, Yi Xian valued the Candle Dragon's time ability even more. Time and space. Time was ranked first and space was ranked second. From the name, it could be seen that the time ability was much more powerful than the space ability. Traveling through the past and future and walking on the river of time, the so-called time was too mysterious, and it was also the power that Yi Xian wanted the most. Therefore, Yi Xian did not dare to be careless at all. He could not let the Candle Dragon escape so easily. He had to stabilize the Candle Dragon first. That was what he needed to do at this moment. You and I are like brothers. How can you not believe me? Yi Xian looked like he was heartbroken. He even scolded the Candle Dragon angrily. Candle Dragon, do you still remember that Dong Huangtai and Di Jun worked together to severely injure you? If I did not fight with my life on the line, you would have died in the Great Witch Demon War. Do you still remember when you begged me for the Tao of Space all those years ago? Did I even hesitate to teach you all of my understanding of the Tao of Space? Yi Xian continuously searched through the memories of the Candle Dragon, bringing up the past one by one. This caused the Candle Dragon's expression to be extremely complicated, and a trace of shame appeared in his eyes. Now, you've escaped from Yi Xian's evil hands, but you don't believe me. Fine, fine, fine. From now on, our brotherhood is over. You go your way, and I'll go mine. Yi Xian angrily refuted. He even flicked his sleeves and turned around to leave. However, a sinister expression flashed through his eyes. He didn't really want to leave this place. This was just a method for him to retreat in order to advance. Yi Xian believed that the Candle Dragon would definitely ask him to stay. As expected, before Yi Xian could take a few steps, the Candle Dragon's expression changed. He immediately stopped Yi Xian and even bowed to Yi Xian. Brother Dijiang, I was wrong. I hope you won't be angry. Humph, Yi Xian scoffed. Candle Dragon, we've known each other for many years. We're both from the Panga lineage. Can't you tell if I'm real or fake? It seems like your time ability has led you to the wrong path. At this moment, the Candle Dragon looked extremely ashamed. How could he not remember how well Di Jiang treated him? Moreover, he was very confused now. Could there really be a problem with his time ability? Moreover, the Candle Dragon was very sure that the Di Jiang standing in front of him was real. Perhaps he was really anxious about being hunted down by Yi Xian, so he had an illusion in the time acceleration. Brother Di Jiang, I was wrong. The more the Candle Dragon thought about it, the more he blamed himself. He hurriedly apologized to Yi Xian. Sigh. Yi Xian let out a long sigh. He walked to the Candle Dragon, and the Candle Dragon did not dodge. He allowed Yi Xian to pat his shoulder and said, "You and I are from the same sect. Why would I blame you? However, Yi Xian is too scary. You and I have to be careful in the future." Although the Candle Dragon allowed Yi Xian to approach him, the time ability around him didn't disperse, and Yi Xian didn't suppress him at the first possible moment. This was because he'd already seen how terrifying the time ability was, so he definitely wouldn't allow himself to fail. He had to kill him in one strike. Now that my brother has returned, you and I can use the time ability to deduce the future of the witch tribe. We can also see what Yi Xian is going to do in the future. Although the Candle Dragon had let down his guard against Di Jiang, he was still extremely afraid of Yi Xian. This was because he had indeed seen Di Jiang turn into a black fog and drown him in the time acceleration. He could not get over this hurdle. Now that Di Jiang was here, with their time ability, they would definitely be able to deduce the future accurately. This was also the Candle Dragon's consolation. Alright. Yi Xian's eyes lit up. He immediately activated the space ability, and the entire Sumeru illusion began to become illusory. The Candle Dragon even formed a seal with both hands and performed the time acceleration again. Buzz! Time and space changed, and the scene became real. The time flow was speeding up, and scenes appeared in the Candle Dragon's eyes again. Di Jiang was performing the technique beside him with a smile on his face. The Candle Dragon was also performing the time acceleration. However, Di Jiang's face changed strangely. He turned into Yi Xian and slammed his palm toward the Candle Dragon's head. Ah! The Candle Dragon woke up with a scream. The time ability around him instantly dissipated, and he suddenly opened his eyes to look at Di Jiang. It was also at this moment when the Candle Dragon was in a daze that Yi Xian finally revealed his fangs. Now, Yi Xian suddenly turned into his original appearance. While the Candle Dragon was in a daze, he slammed his palm toward the Candle Dragon. The Candle Dragon did not have any strength to dodge at all. Bang! There was an explosion in the void, and blood spurted out. The Candle Dragon was hit by Yi Xian's palm on the Candle Dragon's head. Blood kept spurting out of his mouth, and black chains immediately wrapped around his body. He was confined in the void by Yi Xian. Ha ha ha! All of this happened in the blink of an eye. When Yi Xian was done, he laughed wildly and excitedly. On the other hand, the Candle Dragon was dispirited. He was severely injured by Yi Xian's terrifying attack and was on the verge of death. At this moment, he was confined by the black chains and could not use his time ability at all. It's you. It's actually you. Looking at Yi Xian's sinister and cruel face, the Candle Dragon screamed with a trembling voice. His eyes were filled with extreme regret. Why didn't he believe his own judgment? Why didn't he believe what he saw in the time acceleration? It was too late. Everything was too late. The Candle Dragon finally understood that Di Jiang had already met with a calamity. Yi Xian had used some method to turn into Di Jiang and put him in a hopeless situation where he would definitely die. Chapter 983. Yi Xian laughed and said, Candle Dragon, you didn't have to die. Unfortunately, you were too careless. Yi Xian was completely excited. At this moment, the Candle Dragon was imprisoned in his hand, and he was about to obtain the time ability. How long had it been? Yi Xian couldn't even remember clearly. He'd coveted the power of time and space for too long, to the point that he yearned for it day and night. Today was the day he completed his dream. Yi Xian was looking forward to breaking the shackles of heaven and earth, reversing the river of time, and traveling between the past and the future. Thinking about the means he would have in the future, Yi Xian was so excited that he couldn't extricate himself, because he had finally embarked on a path of invincibility. Yi Xian, you won't die a good death. The Candle Dragon was in despair. He knew that he was going to die today, but even if he died, he had to curse Yi Xian. The hatred in his eyes was so strong that it almost solidified. Won't die a good death? Yi Xian laughed coldly and said, I don't know if I will die a good death, but you will die under the Tribulation Transcender's bite. Swallow. Roar. Like a ferocious beast roaring in the ninth heaven, Yi Xian activated the Tribulation Transcender's bite, turning into a terrifying black fog that instantly flooded the Candle Dragon. The Candle Dragon screamed miserably and died. Ancestral land of the witch race, ancestral witch temple. Bang! The Candle Dragon's statue exploded, and the entire ancestral witch temple shook. Hutu and the 9 ancestral witches were heartbroken, and angry voices came out of their mouths. Yi Xian, the witch race will fight you to the death. Hutu coldly reprimanded, and the other 9 ancestral witches were also full of hatred. Everyone was in great grief. Dijiang was dead, and so was the Candle Dragon. Only 10 of the 12 ancestral witches were left, and they were hiding in the small world. This was simply the greatest shame in the history of the witch race. Come. Abruptly, Ho Tu flipped her hand and waved. A drop of Pan Gu spirit blood flew out of the broken statue and was taken into her hand. Dijiang and Candle Jiuyin are dead, but their Pan Gu spirit blood is still here. They will be the last hope of our kind, said Hutu seriously. If we don't take revenge for this, we magi will have lived in vain in the 3 realms. Zhurong roared with hatred. Hutu, don't hesitate. Generate your Pangu body and fight Yi Xian to the death. Gong Gong growled. As the 2 ancestral sorcerers spoke out, the rest of the ancestral sorcerers echoed in anger. Everyone had a mournful look on their faces. Their hatred for Yi Xian had reached its peak. Pangu's true body. Hutu murmured to herself. She looked around at the 9 ancestral sorcerers and said solemnly, generating Pangu's true body is not a trivial matter. Although the 12 ancestral sorcerers have the method of generating Pangu's true body, they have never used it. We must be fully prepared before generating Pangu's true body. Yes, Pangu's true body is not a trivial matter. We must be united to ensure that nothing goes wrong, said Xian Ming in a deep voice. Then what are we waiting for? Let's quickly cultivate this method. When Pangu's true body is born, we must kill Yi Xian, said ancestral sorcerer Tianhao coldly. Pangu's true body is not that simple. Although we have the Pangu spirit blood of Dijiang and Candle Dragon, they are dead. We must find 2 people to inherit the spirit blood. Only then can we generate Pangu's true body. And don't forget that if we want to generate Pangu's true body, we need to practice and reach the realm of being united to unleash the power of Pangu's true body, reminded Hutu first. Ancestral sorcerer, we are willing to inherit Pangu's spirit blood and generate Pangu's true body together with the other ancestral sorcerers. Suddenly, 2 figures entered the ancestral sorcerer temple. One of them was ancient sorcerer Qiyu, while the other was a headless man with a pair of eyes and a mouth on his navel. Qiyu. Xing Tian. Hutu's eyes lit up and she looked relieved. Needless to say, Qiyu was a top expert below the ancestral sorcerer and a real sage to be. Except for the lack of Pangu's spirit blood and divine sense, Qi Yu was the most suitable candidate. Xing Tian was even more incredible. In the Great War of Sorcerer and Demon God Xing Tian went to the ancient demon court alone. Although his head was cut off by Eastern Emperor Tai and Emperor Jun and he was defeated, Xing Tian's battle also established his reputation. Okay, you too will inherit these 2 drops of Pangu's spirit blood. I will also teach you the method to condense Pangu's true body. I hope we can do it as soon as possible, Hutu said solemnly. On this day, dark clouds rumbled in the sorcerer tribe. The 12 divine beings killing formation was activated. 12 towering figures sat cross-legged in the formation, and an extremely terrifying aura spread out. Hutu and the others did not know how long it would take to condense Pangu's true body, but they believed that when Pangu's true body appeared, it would be the time of Yi Xian's death. Shumi Fairyland. Yi Xian sat cross-legged. His body was illusory, and 2 mysterious beams of light twined around him. The time and space of this small world were changing, giving people a feeling that the universe was upside down and the yin and yang were in chaos. Time acceleration. Suddenly, Yi Xian roared, and the scene around him flowed quickly. Obviously, he was using the divine sense of time to peek into the future. Rumble. Various scenes and images were presented. A towering giant appeared in front of Yi Xian's eyes, and he was attacking this giant. The boundless world was constantly collapsing, and a scene of destruction appeared. Crack. The mirror shattered and returned to reality. Yi Xian's face turned pale, and the power of the heavenly Tao suddenly suppressed him. However, it was blocked by the chaotic fog around him. Suppression of the heavenly Tao. Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes, and a look of understanding flashed across his eyes. It seemed that the divine sense of time was not tolerated by heaven and earth. Every time he used this technique, not only would the power of the heavenly Tao suppress him, but even the divine sense of time would backfire on him. Fortunately, Yi Xian's cultivation was among the 4 tribulations of the heavenly Tao. Whether it was the backfire of the divine sense of time or the suppression of the power of the heavenly Tao, it did not affect him much. Pangu's true body. Yi Xian was slightly startled, because he saw an indomitable giant in the time acceleration, and he was in the middle of a great battle with this giant. Yi Xian did not need to think to know that this giant was Pangu's true body. Unfortunately, the time acceleration could only peek into the future, and he did not see the outcome of this battle. After all, the divine sense of time was only a divine sense, and this was not the power of time that allowed Yi Xian to walk between the past and the future. Moreover, the future was unpredictable. Even if Yi Xian truly controlled the power of time and space, the future could be changed from the present. Therefore, the power of time and space could be said to be extremely mysterious. At this moment, Yi Xian had only scratched the surface through the divine sense of time. Chapter 984. It seems that Hutu is behind this. Yi Xian murmured to himself. He could guess that the real body of Pangu was related to the Wu tribe and Hutu, but Yi Xian did not care too much about it. Yi Xian did not know how strong the real body of Pangu was, but he knew that he would become stronger and stronger. Because he had devoured the gifted magic of the 2 ancestors of sorcerers, he had truly opened his path to invincibility. The strong would always be strong. He had to have the spirit to defeat all his enemies in the world, and he had to have the confidence to be invincible. This was the performance that an invincible expert should have. At this moment, Yi Xian had already condensed the invincible heart. He only treated the real body of Pangu as a training ground for himself, and he had the confidence to suppress the real body of Pangu. Yi Xian had the cultivation of the 4 tribulations of the way of heaven, mastered the space-time magic, and had an extremely strong physical body. He had mastered the immortality technique, and he also had the heaven-destroying halberd and the nirvana armor. There were no more than 5 people in the 3 realms who could match him. However, Yi Xian was not satisfied, because he still had one more thing to do, and this thing was more important than anything else. The power of time and space. Yes, the power of time and space. Although he had devoured the space-time magic of Dijiang and the Candle Dragon, this was not what Yi Xian really wanted. Because the magic was just a magic, it was not the power of time, and it could not allow him to travel between the future and the past. Yi Xian had never forgotten the person who reversed the river of time and came to this world. That was his future, and this meant that he could definitely control the power of time and go back to the past. However, Yi Xian knew one thing very well, and that was that there was no such thing as a free lunch. He had only devoured the space-time magic, but he did not control the power of time and space. This required him to cultivate and find a way to control the power of time and space. In the past, Yi Xian didn't have a clue, nor did he know anything about the power of time and space. But now, it was different. When he devoured the innate abilities of Dijiang and the Candle Dragon, it opened a path to the power of time and space for him. Although this path was extremely difficult to traverse, it was a path that Yi Xian had to take. He had already turned his time and space god arts into 2 seeds. He only needed to wait for these 2 seeds to germinate and give birth to a strand of space-time power. That was what he needed to do. Be it the Candle Dragon or Dijiang, the 2 of them could only control space-time's superpower and could not cultivate it on their own. However, Yi Xian would not be like the 2 of them. He wanted to combine time and space and truly merge the 2 into one. For 1,000 years, Yi Xian kept fusing the 2 seeds. He wanted to fuse them into one and become a seed of space-time power. Unfortunately, Yi Xian still failed in the end. Time and space could not be merged. No matter what method Yi Xian used, it was useless. This was a difficult problem placed before Yi Xian, and he had to solve it himself. Only by combining time and space could he truly take the most important step. Epiphany, yes, it was an epiphany. Yi Xian needed an epiphany to be able to combine time and space. However, this epiphany was not something that could be forced. Perhaps an incident or a battle would allow him to have an epiphany on how to combine time and space. Rumble. The Sumeru fairyland suddenly shattered. Yi Xian took a step out and disappeared. He wanted to find a place to study the space-time superpower in his body and turn them into a space-time seed. However, he did not know how long this would take. The 3 realms were peaceful and the world was peaceful. Since Yi Xian disappeared for 30,000 years, the 3 realms had become extremely harmonious under the rule of the Ziwei Tiandi. There were few disputes between the orthodoxies. However, there was one race that did not fall into this category. This race was the human race. Ever since Nuwa destroyed the human race's destiny, the human race in the 4 great continents of the Earth Immortal realm was embroiled in internal strife. If it wasn't a change of ruler and vassal, then it was an all-out war between nations. Even some human race cultivators were embroiled in all sorts of disasters. Although the concept of destiny was illusory, it was something that truly existed. Although the human race's hidden dangers did not cause any ripples in the 3 realms, they quietly spread to the other major powers. Whether it was the celestial court or the orthodoxies, wherever there were living beings, there would be humans. It was an indisputable fact that the human race was the main character of the world. The 33rd layer of the celestial court, the celestial emperor palace. Ziwei Tiandi sat high on the throne. Below him stood a group of immortals and demon kings. It was currently the morning court session. The Ziwei Tiandi was handling the affairs of the 3 realms. It had been 30,000 years since Ziwei Heaven and Earth became the celestial emperor. In these 30,000 years, he could be said to have managed the celestial court well. Everyone was sincerely convinced by him. No one dared to be disobedient to Ziwei Heaven and Earth like before. The Ziwei Tiandi's influence spread throughout the 3 realms. The 33rd layer of the celestial court was flourishing day by day. Your Majesty, Princess Yaoyue has secretly gone to the lower realms again. The celestial inspector strode out and reported to the Ziwei Tiandi with a bow. However, his face was slightly pale. It was clear that he had something else to say. Hearing the celestial inspector's report, the Ziwei Tiandi smiled and said, Yaoyue is a very active person. Since she wants to go down to the lower realms to play, then let her be. Yi Yaoyue was Yi Xian's adopted sister. How could the Ziwei Tiandi not dote on her? This was the little princess of the celestial court. How could the Ziwei Tiandi really blame her for going down to the lower realms to play? But, Princess Yaoyue, she. The celestial inspector stuttered, unable to continue. Seeing the celestial inspector's stuttering, the Ziwei Tiandi was startled. He said, What happened to Princess Yaoyue? Your Majesty, please forgive me. The celestial inspector fell to his knees and kowtowed to Crepe Myrtle, begging for forgiveness. Speak, what happened to Princess Yaoyue? The Ziwei was enraged. After 30,000 years, he already had the terrifying aura of a celestial emperor. Moreover, he was a heavenly Dao sage. His rebuke scared the celestial inspector quite a bit. Princess Yaoyue married a mortal man from the lower realms. They even gave birth to a pair of children. When I found out, I was already powerless. The celestial inspector trembled as he reported, his forehead touching the ground. He did not dare to look the Ziwei Tiandi in the eyes. What? The Ziwei Tiandi was stunned. He was stunned. The celestial court immortal kings were even more shocked. They could not believe their ears. A dignified princess of the heavenly court had actually gotten together with a mortal man and even gave birth to a son and daughter. This was simply the greatest joke in the world. If this was true, then wouldn't the 33 levels of the heavenly court be ridiculed by all the living beings in the 3 dimensions? How dare you slander Princess Yaoyue? Venus Taibai scolded coldly. He even summoned 2 heavenly generals and said, Push him out of the southern heavenly gate and behead him on the immortal execution stage. Your Majesty, please spare my life. How could this subject have the guts to slander Princess Yaoyue? What I said is the truth. The heaven-inspecting immortal official loudly begged. This caused the entire heavenly court to become so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. Let him go. Before the 2 heavenly generals could make a move, the heavenly emperor of Purple Myrtle said coldly. This caused the heavenly sentinel immortal officer to hurriedly express his gratitude and quickly tell him everything about Yi Yaoyue. Chapter 985. Mortal Li Yuyun. The North Pole Celestial Emperor frowned and uttered the mortal's name. Your Majesty, this Li Yuyun is just a mortal scholar. I don't know why Princess Yaoyue is willing to give herself to him. They have already given birth to a son and a daughter. Your Majesty, please understand, the Celestial Inspector reported. At this moment, the entire Celestial Emperor Palace was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. No one dared to interrupt, because this was a huge scandal in the Celestial Court. If the Celestial Court's first princess married a mortal, the entire Celestial Court would become a laughingstock. If it were any other immortal, they would have just killed her. But Yi Yaoyue was Yi Tiandi's sworn sister. This matter was extremely thorny. However, immortals and mortals could not marry. This was an iron law since ancient times. This matter had always been criticized, and could not be allowed to happen in the Celestial Court. Your Majesty, why don't you let the old minister go and invite Princess Yaoyue back, and then we can make a decision later. Venus Taibai requested. Alright, Venus, I'll leave this matter to you. Quickly bring Yaoyue back to the Celestial Court. She cannot be allowed to stay in the mortal realm, Ziwei Tiandi instructed solemnly. Old minister obeys, Venus Taibai accepted the order and left. He called out to the Celestial Inspector, and the 2 went down to the mortal realm. This matter cannot be publicized. If anyone spreads this matter to the outside world, I will punish them severely. Ziwei Tiandi said sternly, then waved his sleeves and left the emperor's throne. However, his eyes were filled with worry, and he was clearly not as calm as he appeared. After Ziwei Tiandi left, the immortal and demon kings of the celestial court also dispersed. However, this matter was not a small matter, and it caused them to discuss it in private. Dongxing Divine Continent, Ao Lai. This was a small and peaceful village. At this moment, it was dusk, and every family was making a fire to cook. Strands of smoke rose from the kitchen, and children could be seen playing at the entrance of the village from time to time. Lotus Village was the name of this village, and it was only a mortal village. At the end of the village, there was a thatched hut. The courtyard was surrounded by a fence, and some fruits and vegetables were planted there. There was a young man and a young woman working together in the garden. "Husband, you should return to your room and rest. I'll plant the remaining seeds." Yi Yaoyue was dressed in coarse sackcloth and her hair was tied into a bun. She held a hoe in her hand and was plowing the fields. She had a smile on her face as she spoke to the man beside her. "You, leave this kind of rough work to me. You should quickly return to your room and rest." Li Yuyun was dressed in a white sackcloth robe. He was about 20 years old, and he had sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes. He was scholarly and handsome. Although he could not be called a handsome man, he had a quiet and elegant feeling about him. Yi Yaoyue hurriedly pushed Li Yuyun back to the hut. "Husband, you are a scholar. You should still prioritize the imperial examinations. Husband, quickly go back and study. Leave this rough work to me. You've suffered marrying me," Li Yuyun said with an ashamed expression. "It's not bitter, it's really not bitter. How can you, suffer when I can always be by your side?" Yi Yaoyue muttered to herself. "Father, mother, I'm hungry." A pair of children about 4 or 5 years old poked their heads out of the hut and pouted at the couple. "Mother understands. I'll immediately start a fire to cook." Yi Yaoyue smiled at her children and comforted them. "Wife, I, Li Yuyun, swear that when I pass the imperial examinations, I will definitely let you and your children live a life of luxury." Li Yuyun pointed to the sky and made a vow. He tightly held his wife in his arms. "All right, quickly go and study. You, believes that husband will definitely pass the imperial examinations." Yi Yaoyue softly said. "Kacha." Suddenly, a muffled thunder came from the sky. However, there were no dark clouds in the surroundings. This caused Yi Yaoyue's expression to change. She raised her eyes to look at the sky. "Wife, it looks like it's going to rain. Why don't we plant these seeds tomorrow?" Li Yuyun was only a mortal. How could he know the source of the muffled thunder? He thought that it was going to rain heavily. "Husband, return to your room first. You, just remember to send some mended clothes to Auntie Zhang. I'll be back soon." Without waiting for Li Yuyun to speak, Yi Yaoyue left the house. This caused Li Yuyun to sigh helplessly. He felt even more guilty towards Yi Yaoyue. As a scholar, he was really useless. He had to rely on his wife to take care of everything at home. Buzz. As soon as Yi Yaoyue left the house, she turned into a golden light and soared into the sky. Her entire person disappeared from Lotus Village. If this scene was seen by Li Yuyun, he would probably be extremely shocked. In the sky, Venus Tai Bai and the Sky Patrol Immortal official stood motionless. As the golden light shot over, Venus Tai Bai looked at Yi Yaoyue with a wry smile. "Princess Yaoyue, what do you want the old minister to do?" Venus Tai Bai sighed. "Greetings, Venus." Yi Yaoyue bowed. Although her cultivation was that of the Daoyuo Jingxian and Venus Tai Bai was only an all-heaven golden immortal, Venus Tai Bai was an important minister of the celestial court. Naturally, she couldn't neglect the proper etiquette. The old minister doesn't dare to accept the princess's courtesy. You'd better quickly return to the celestial court with the old minister. Venus Taibai turned away and didn't mention that Yi Yaoyue had given birth to a pair of children with Immortal. Venus, I'm sorry. Yaoyue can't return to the celestial court with you. Yi Yaoyue's eyes drooped and her voice trembled slightly. This proved that she wasn't calm. Princess. Venus Taibai sighed and said, do you know that you have given birth to a pair of children with Immortal? This has already brought shame to the celestial court. As long as you return to the celestial court with the old minister, Ziwei Tiandi won't blame you. The celestial court will also do his best to suppress this matter. Venus, I know that I have brought shame to the celestial court, but Yaoyue can't leave her husband and 2 children behind. Please apologize to Brother Ziwei on my behalf. Tell him that Yaoyue has let them down. From now on, I'm no longer the princess of the celestial court, Yi Yaoyue said with tears in her eyes. Silly, you're silly. Venus Taibai sighed and said, Princess, oh princess, what do you want the old minister to do? What do you want Ziwei Tiandi to do? The celestial court has its own rules. If you break them, then others will follow suit. Won't the entire celestial court be in chaos? Princess, listen to the old minister's advice. It's still not too late to return to the celestial court with me. If you wait until the celestial court sends Daluo Jingxian to capture you, this matter will blow up. Even if Ziwei Tiandi wants to protect you, His Majesty can only enforce the law impartially. Venus Taibai advised earnestly, hoping that Yi Yaoyue would change her mind. Venus, Yaoyue knows that you have good intentions, but I already have a husband and children. I just want to spend the rest of my life with them. I'm sorry, but I can't promise you. Yi Yaoyue bowed to Venus Taibai. Chapter 986. Eldest Princess, you are a criminal. Why are you still so stubborn? The Sky Inspector Immortal suddenly rebuked. He had to bring Yi Yaoyue back to the celestial court today. Otherwise, how would he and Venus Taibai answer to Ziwei Tiandi? No matter what you say, I will not go back with you. Yi Yaoyue said resolutely. Venus, stand aside. Wait for me to capture the eldest princess. The Sky Inspector Immortal was at the first heavenly layer of Grand Heavenly Realm. Although his position in the celestial court was not as high as Venus Taibai's, his cultivation was solid and not something Venus Taibai could compare to. No. Venus Taibai hurriedly tried to stop him, but it was too late. The Sky Inspector Immortal burst out with grand heavenly golden light and suppressed Yi Yaoyue with a great art. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Naturally, Yi Yaoyue wouldn't just sit there and wait for her death. She didn't seem to have done anything, but with a flip of her hand, a golden rope shot out. It turned into a long streak of light that whizzed towards the heaven-inspecting Immortal. Not good, the Immortal binding rope. Taibai Jinxing exclaimed. What followed next was a tragedy for the heaven-inspecting Immortal official. The Immortal binding rope was an Immortal supreme treasure. Even a Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal would have to surrender. The heaven-inspecting Immortal official was unable to resist at all and was suppressed by the Immortal binding rope on the spot. Not to mention a mere Sky Inspector Immortal, even a peak Grand Heavenly Realm cannot break free from the Immortal binding rope. Yi Yaoyue said coldly. Sigh. Venus Taibai let out a long sigh. He knew that he would not be able to bring Yi Yaoyue back to the celestial court today. He bowed and said, Eldest Princess, please release him. We will leave now. Yi Yaoyue had no intention of harming them, so she naturally wouldn't make things difficult for them. She recited a spell to retract the Immortal binding rope, freeing the Sky Patrol Immortal official. Jinxing, I'm sorry, Yi Yaoyue said apologetically. Eldest Princess, even though you possess the Immortal binding rope bestowed upon you by Yi Tiandi, and even a peak golden Immortal can't do anything to you, you must know that you've already violated the rules of the heavens. Take care of yourself. Venus Tai-bai let out a long sigh, and then he called out to the Sky Patrol Immortal official before returning to the celestial court. Yi Yaoyue didn't show any joy on her face as she watched Venus Tai-bai leave. Her brows were tightly knitted together because she knew that this matter wasn't over yet. However, there was nothing she could do. She could only take one step at a time. 33 layers of the celestial court. The North Pole Celestial Emperor sat on his throne with a heavy expression on his face. Below him, Tai-bai Jinxing and the heaven-inspecting immortal official were reporting to him about Yi Yaoyue. She's not coming back. Ziwei Tiandi asked with a frown. Your Majesty is wise. Your subject originally wanted to capture the eldest princess and bring her back to the celestial court. However, the eldest princess's immortal binding rope is extremely powerful. Your subject is no match for the eldest princess. The Sky Patrol immortal official kowtowed in shame. The rules of the celestial court cannot be broken for the eldest princess alone. Which subject is willing to bring the eldest princess back to the celestial court? Ziwei Tiandi asked as he looked around at the immortal demon kings. This. For a moment, the celestial court was silent. No one stepped forward to accept the order. Clearly, Yi Yaoyue's identity was too sensitive. If they really went to capture her, they would offend her. Although Yi Yaoyue was the Daluo Jinxian and possessed an immortal treasure like the immortal binding rope, the celestial court was filled with talents. There were even dozens of quasi-saints. Capturing Yi Yaoyue wasn't a problem at all. Unfortunately, everyone knew that Yi Yaoyue was Yi Xian's adopted sister. Although Yi Xian had passed the throne to Ziwei, the celestial court still respected Yi Xian. No one knew what Yi Xian's intentions were. Naturally, no one would recklessly step into these muddy waters. Where are the 28 mansions of the heavenly cycle? Ziwei Tiandi began to call out. Your subjects are here. The 28 mansions of the heavenly cycle quickly stepped forward and bowed to Ziwei Tiandi. Quickly go to the lower worlds and capture the eldest princess and bring her back to the celestial court. Remember, this must be done in secret. Do not let the outside world know, Ziwei Tiandi said solemnly. Yes, Your Majesty. The 28 mansions of the heavenly cycle obeyed and left. They even selected 10,000 celestial soldiers and generals and went to the Dongxing Divine Continent. 7 days later. The 28 mansions of the heavenly cycle knelt in the celestial emperor palace with bruises all over their faces. Ziwei Tiandi smiled bitterly, her eyes filled with helplessness. It's not that our cultivations are inferior to the eldest princess. It's just that the eldest princess's treasures are too powerful. We are no match for the eldest princess. Please punish us, Your Majesty. The 28 mansions of the heavenly cycle knelt and begged for forgiveness, their faces filled with shame. One had to know that Yi Yaoyue's cultivation was not only at the Daluo Jinxian level, but she also had many treasures. These treasures were all bestowed by Yi Xian many years ago so that Yi Yaoyue would have the means to protect herself. Now, Yi Yaoyue did not use these treasures against outsiders. However, the generals of the celestial court had suffered greatly because of her treasures. Does anyone have a good plan? Celestial Emperor Ziwei heaved a long sigh. Let me go and bring Yaoyue back. Suddenly, a figure entered the Celestial Emperor Palace. It was Mahamayuri Kongxian. With his arrival, the immortal and monster kings of the Celestial Court hurriedly bowed to him. Even Ziwei, the Celestial Emperor, rose to greet him. Thank you for your hard work, Mahamayuri. Ziwei Tiandi nodded discreetly at Kongxian. His lips moved slightly, clearly communicating with Kongxian. In truth, Ziwei Tiandi really did not want to make things difficult for Yi Yaoyue. However, as the Celestial Emperor, he had to enforce the law impartially. If he ignored Yi Yaoyue's relationship with a mortal in the lower realm, how would the 33 layers of the Celestial Court manage the affairs of the Celestial Court? Although no one would say anything on the surface, if someone else violated the heavenly laws and used Yi Yaoyue as an example, wouldn't the laws of the celestial court be thrown into disarray? Therefore, Ziwei had to summon Yi Yaoyue back and give her some symbolic punishment. This was also a strategy to deceive everyone. Kang Xian naturally understood Ziwei's intentions. He nodded lightly and left the Celestial Emperor Palace, heading straight for the Dongxing Divine Continent. Lotus Village, in the thatched hut. Li Yuyun was reading at the table. Yi Yaoyue was looking at her husband with her chin in her hands. However, her face was a little haggard. She seemed to be lost in thought. Li Yuyun put down his book and rubbed Yi Yaoyue's shoulders tenderly. "My wife, have you not rested well? Why do you look so haggard these days? My husband, if one day I leave you and our children, will you blame me?" Yi Yaoyue bit her lip, a touch of sadness on her face. "My wife, why are you speaking nonsense? No matter what happens, I, Li Yuyun, will always be here. I will never let you leave my side." Although Li Yuyun was a scholar, he was not pedantic. How could he not see that his wife had a lot on her mind? This made him pat his chest and promise Yi Yaoyue. "Mother, don't leave us." Her children pulled Yi Yaoyue's hand and shook it. This made Yi Yaoyue's gaze become extremely resolute. No matter what, she would never return to the celestial court, let alone abandon her husband and her children. "Be good, mother will definitely not leave you and father." Yi Yaoyue stroked her children's hair and comforted them. "Yaoyue, you are too muddle-headed." Suddenly, a cold voice came from outside the thatched hut. When Yi Yaoyue heard this familiar voice, her face turned pale. She immediately stood up and walked outside. Her voice trembled as she reminded Li Yuyun, "My husband, no matter what happens, you must not come out." Chapter 987. My wife? Looking at Yi Yaoyue's pale face, Li Yuyun was stunned. However, before he could ask what happened, the door of the thatched cottage was locked by Yi Yaoyue. In the outside world, Kang Xian stood with his hands behind his back. There was no terrifying aura around him. Instead, he looked toward the thatched cottage with a disappointed expression. "Brother Kang Xian." Yi Yaoyue's face was pale and bloodless. Her eyes were filled with sadness and despair. She knew that she was doomed when she saw Kang Xian arrive. Kang Xian was a figure at the peak of this age to be. Even though she had many magic treasures in her hands, she could only surrender in the face of Mahamyuri. She had no power to resist. "Yaoyue, you are so muddle-headed. You have committed a grave mistake by privately marrying Immortal. How can you face Yi Tiandi and the entire celestial court?" Kang Xian said resentfully. "Brother Kang Xian, I..." Yi Yaoyue stuttered. She did not know what to say. "Let's go. Return to the celestial court with me. I will send people to take care of your children and this mortal secretly. This is the only thing I can do." Kang Xian said coldly. Brother Kang Xian. I am sorry. I really can't go with you." Yi Yaoyue clenched her teeth and rejected Kang Xian's request. "Yaoyue, do you want to force me to fight?" Kang Xian was furious. The five-colored divine light faintly overflowed. Even the sky and earth changed color. "Brother Kang Xian, I know I am no match for you. However, if you want me to abandon my husband and children, forgive Yaoyue for not being able to comply. Even if I die in your hands today, Yaoyue will have no regrets." Clang clang clang. A autumn water celestial sword appeared in Yi Yaoyue's hand. She pointed the sword at Kang Xian with an expression that said she would rather die than submit. This made Kang Xian's face turn gloomy. His eyes were filled with disappointment. "Yaoyue, then don't blame me for not remembering our old relationship. I have no choice but to capture you back to the celestial court." Kang Xian suddenly attacked. The five-colored divine light rippled out. Yi Yaoyue took out her celestial sword and turned it into a sky full of sword radiance that slashed toward Kang Xian. Clang clang clang. Kang Xian was so terrifying that he was no match for Yi Yaoyue. The sword radiance in the sky was shattered, a ray of the five-colored divine light bombarded Yi Yaoyue's chest. A ray's ants, Yi, fell. Wife. Mother. Suddenly, the door of the straw hut was slammed open. Li Yuyun was glaring at Kang Xian furiously. He even stumbled over to Yi Yaoyue and hugged her. Their son and daughter were crying and shaking Yi Yaoyue's arms, calling for their mother. Who are you? Why did you hurt my wife? Li Yuyun was extremely angry. His face was flushed red as he scolded Kang Xian. Hubby, don't, he's my big brother. Yi Yaoyue's face was pale. Kang Xian sneered and said, you talk big, but unfortunately, you're just a mortal. If I wanted to kill you, I wouldn't even have to lift a finger. If it weren't for Yaoyue, you'd have died thousands of times already. Remember, if you want to become Yaoyue's husband, you have to have the strength and status to match her. Otherwise, empty talk will only make you a laughingstock. Kang Xian flung his sleeves and strode away. I'll remember what you said. I'll definitely pass the exam and become a man above all others, Li Yuyun roared at Kang Xian. But to Kang Xian, it was an extremely laughable thing. Husband, come back. Yi Yaoyue whispered miserably. She knew she'd avoided a disaster today, but what would she do in the future? Although the three realms were vast, how could she avoid the pursuit of the Celestial Court? The 33rd layer of the Celestial Court, the Celestial Emperor Palace. The Immortals were speechless. The Yao Kings were silent. Ziwei Tiandi sat on the Emperor's throne, his brows tightly knitted together. Below him was Kang Xian, who had returned to the Celestial Court. After all, I watched Yaoyue grow up. I can't bear to see her die in front of me. Kang Xian was slightly ashamed. He'd originally said that he'd bring Yi Yaoyue back, but in the end, he'd failed. Ziwei Tiandi sighed and comforted him, there's no need to worry, wise king. If it were me, I'd do the same. In an instant, the atmosphere in the Celestial Emperor Palace became somewhat stifling. Even Kang Xian had returned without success. Who else could bring Yi Yaoyue back to the Celestial Court? Chapter 988. Do you have any good ideas? Ziwei Tiandi asked in a low voice. Unfortunately, the Immortals and Demon Kings were all speechless. Even Kang Xian had failed, so what could they do? In fact, this matter was not difficult to handle. Any pre-saint could capture Yi Yaoyue, but Yi Yaoyue's identity was too sensitive. If they really forced her to die, how could they face Yi Xian? They could not beat her, nor could they kill her. They also had to smoothly bring Yi Yaoyue back to the Celestial Court. This matter was too tricky. In terms of cultivation, Kang Xian was a peak pre-saint. In terms of persuasion, Venus Tai Bai was the best. But both of them had failed. Who else could accomplish this? Your Majesty, as the saying goes, whoever tied the bell must untie it. Only Yi Tiandi can manage this matter. Just as everyone was silent, Brilliance would stepped forward and directly pointed out the crux of the matter. No. Suddenly, Dong Huang Tai strode in from outside the hall and directly refuted this decision. With Dong Huang Tai's arrival, everyone stood up and bowed. Your Majesty, Yi Tiandi meditates in the great Tao of heaven and earth. He has long ignored the affairs of the three realms. If we trouble him over such a trivial matter, won't it mean that we are too useless? Dong Huang Tai said in a low voice. As Dong Huang Tai finished speaking, many demon kings nodded in agreement. Dong Huang, you mean? Ziwei Tiandi wanted to say something but stopped. I have the Bell of Chaos. I can suppress Yaoyue in an instant. I will personally descend to the mortal world and bring her back to the celestial court, Dong Huang Tai said. No. Suddenly, Kang Xian waved his hand and interrupted, Yao Yue has a strong temperament. If anything happens to her, won't we see a tragedy? Well. Dong Huang Tai frowned, hesitation in his eyes. Kang Xian is right. Yao Yue has many magic treasures, but she can't fight back against a pre-saint. This matter has nothing to do with cultivation. We need her to sincerely return to the celestial court, Ziwei Tiandi said with a frown. It was obvious that Kang Xian didn't bring Yi Yaoyue back. Even though the Eastern Emperor Tai had the bell of primal chaos in his hands and forcefully suppressed Yi Yaoyue, if something really happened, they wouldn't be able to explain it to Yi Xian. My king, Star King Wood Brilliance was right, Kang Xian said to Crepe Myrtle seriously. It is difficult for an honest official to resolve a family dispute. Only God Yi Tiandi can resolve this. That's exactly what I was thinking. The North Pole Celestial Emperor nodded slowly, but his expression was slightly troubled. It's just that Celestial Emperor Yi has been gone for 30,000 years. We have no idea where he is, so how can we tell him about this? Perhaps we don't know where Celestial Emperor Yi is, but there is one person who definitely knows. Kang Xian smiled with a confident look. Who? Ziwei Tiandi asked in surprise. Huang Tianjun. Kang Xian said the person's name. Yi Yaoyue married a mortal and gave birth to a son and a daughter. In the Celestial Emperor Palace. Fatso Huang frowned deeply. Kang Xian and Ziwei Tiandi looked at him expectantly. The immortal and monster kings on both sides looked Fatso Huang up and down, puzzled. This person was only Daluo Jingxian. How did he know Yi Tiandi's whereabouts? Huang Tianjun, only Celestial Emperor Yi can resolve this matter. Although we don't want to alarm Celestial Emperor Yu, there is nothing we can do now, Celestial Emperor Ziwei said in a low voice. Brother Huang, we can only rely on you now, Kang Xian said solemnly. All right, I understand. Fatso Huang nodded lightly, then strode out of the Celestial Emperor Palace. Ziwei Tiandi and Kang Xian looked at each other, the heaviness in their eyes fading slightly. Fatso Huang left the Celestial Court and rode his golden cloud down to the lower realm. Clearly, in the vast 33rd layer of the Celestial Court, only he knew where Yi Xian was and only he could contact Yi Xian. Earth Immortal Realm, Broken Mountain. The sky was vast, the ground was vast, and the mountains were continuous. An enormous peak that pierced the sky towered into the clouds, numerous 3 kilometers tall ancient pine trees rose from the ground, and luxuriant flowers and plants stretched out endlessly, causing this place to seem like a paradise. In a valley. A straw hut, a clear pond, and a green bamboo forest swayed in the wind. When a breeze blew, the bamboo leaves rustled. It was a peaceful and tranquil place. Beside the clear pond, a person sat cross-legged. He wore black clothes, and his hair was silver white like snow. It fluttered slightly in the breeze, and it gave others a peerlessly beautiful and unreal feeling. Heaven and earth are reversed, the sun and moon hang upside down, time and space become one, and the myriad of techniques are infinite. OM. The world froze and everything fell silent. Strands of mysterious ripples blossomed around this person, causing the world to become extremely viscous. Ripples rippled out incessantly, causing the surrounding scenery to faintly distort. Crack. The sound of a mirror shattering resounded. The distorted space suddenly returned to normal, and a long sigh came from this person. It's been 30,000 years, a full 30,000 years. Why have I still failed? Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes, and a wisp of desolate and lonely aura rippled out. A long sigh came from his mouth, and there was deep unwillingness in his words. 30,000 years. A full 30,000 years. When Yi Xian devoured the spacetime divine ability of the 2 ancestral lands, he lived in seclusion on Broken Mountain for 30,000 years. He wanted to combine his spacetime divine ability and spacetime divine ability, and turn them into a real spacetime seed. Unfortunately, after 30,000 years, Yi Xian did not know how many methods he used, but in the end, it all ended in failure. He could not achieve what he wanted at all. 30,000 years might not be a long time for a saint, and even the time Daluo Jingxian spent cultivating in seclusion was not very long. However, to Yi Xian, 30,000 years was too long, and it was enough for him to take a step further. However, he had wasted 30,000 years and was unable to combine his spacetime divine ability and spacetime divine ability. This was simply unacceptable to him. However, he had to accept it even if he did not want to. It should be known that cultivating a spacetime seed was something that surpassed the great Tao of heaven and earth. It was simply impossible for Yi Xian to succeed in just 30,000 years. Thud, thud, thud. Suddenly, a series of footsteps came from outside the bamboo forest. This also made Yi Xian feel something. He looked at the person who came, and it was Fatso Huang who rushed over from the celestial court. What happened that made you come here to find me? Yi Xian whispered softly. Sir, something happened. Fatso Huang quickly walked to Yi Xian. He first bowed to Yi Xian, then quickly told him everything about Yi Yaoyue. The union of a celestial and a mortal, and Yaoyue gave birth to a child. Yi Xian muttered to himself, then shook his head helplessly. He did not expect such a thing to happen, and it even disturbed his current cultivation. In the past, Yang Jian split a mountain to save his mother, and even the Jade Emperor's daughter married a mortal. I did not expect such a thing to happen to me. Yi Xian murmured bleakly. Sir, Yaoyue is your sworn sister. The immortals of the celestial court are helpless. Now, only you can restrain her. Fatso Huang sighed. Fine, since the space-time powers cannot be combined, I will go see Yaoyue and see what kind of husband she has found for herself. Yi Xian nodded faintly. He stood up from the side of the clear pond and disappeared with one step. Fatso Huang hurriedly followed Yi Xian. Chapter 989. Dongxing Divine Continent, Ao Lai, Lotus Village. Li Yuyun and his wife were sitting opposite each other in the courtyard surrounded by a fence. Husband, let's move out, Yi Yaoyue said with a worried face. Wife, who is that big brother of yours? Why do we have to move out? What happened? Although Li Yuyun was a scholar, he was not pedantic. Instead, he was a very intelligent person. From Yi Yaoyue's abnormal behavior and the arrival of Kong Xian, it was clear that Yi Yaoyue's identity was not simple. Yi Yaoyue was speechless. She did not know how to explain her identity to Li Yuyun. She was even more afraid that if she revealed her identity, Li Yuyun would be shocked and unable to accept it. Husband, don't ask. You only need to know that my family is very powerful. They will not allow us to be together. For our future, let's leave this place, Yi Yaoyue said sadly. Wife, regardless of whether your family agrees or not, I will definitely prove to them that I, Li Yuyun, can definitely give you happiness. Let me face them. Li Yuyun said in a powerful voice. Yi Yaoyue said anxiously, Husband, you don't understand. They are not as simple as you think. They are the heavens. Little sister. Suddenly, a soft voice came from outside the courtyard. When this voice sounded, Yi Yaoyue felt a loud bang in her head. Her face instantly turned pale and she could not continue speaking. Big brother. Yi Yaoyue turned around with great difficulty. Her face was extremely pale and her eyes were filled with despair. There was also a trace of fear. Who are you? Li Yuyun looked in the direction of the voice and saw that two people had appeared outside the house. The person in the lead was dressed in black. His hair was as white as snow and he gave off a feeling of elegance. The other person was obese. Judging from his posture, he was the servant of this black-clothed youth. Li Yuyun frowned. He knew that trouble was coming. Little sister, it seems like this is the husband you found for yourself. Yi Xian slowly walked into the fenced courtyard. He didn't have the slightest bit of anger on his face. Instead, he displayed a calm and collected attitude. Big brother. Yi Yaoyue's body and mind trembled. She knelt on the ground. She did not expect that her sworn brother would come here personally. If Yi Yaoyue cared about the most in this world, other than her husband and child, then it would be Yi Xian in front of her. She felt reverence for Yi Xian. My wife, he is. Li Yuyun frowned. He had never seen Yi Yaoyue like this. Even when his wife threatened to kill herself last time, she was now kneeling in fear before this person. Yuyun, kneel down. He is my big brother. Yi Yaoyue kept tugging on Li Yuyun's sleeve as her voice trembled. Big brother? Li Yuyun said in a daze. However, he did not kneel to Yi Xian. Clearly, Li Yuyun was an unyielding man. He hurriedly bowed to Yi Xian and said, Big brother, Yaoyue was being unreasonable. Please don't blame me. Thank you for taking care of Yaoyue all these years. Yaoyue kowtows to you. As Li Yuyun spoke, he was about to kneel and kowtow to Yi Xian, but Yi Xian did not let him kneel. Instead, he helped him up and said, We're all family. There's no need for such formalities. Qinger, Liner, come and greet your uncle. Yi Yaoyue wiped away the mist in her eyes. She hurriedly called her children over, and the two children came to their mother's side. They looked at Yi Xian curiously. Quick, call him uncle, Yi Yaoyue constantly urged her children. Hello, uncle. The two children greeted Yi Xian with crisp voices. This made Yi Xian's eyes become dazed. He never thought that he would become an uncle. Afterwards, a smile appeared on his face. 2 golden pills had appeared in his hand at some point, and he handed them to the two children. I came in a hurry, so I didn't prepare anything. These 2 pills can strengthen the bones and tendons. Take it as a token of my kindness, Yi Xian said softly. Chapter 990. Why aren't you thanking uncle? Yi Yaoyue was startled. She hurriedly instructed her children to take the pill. Yi Yaoyue knew very well that the pill her elder brother had taken out was definitely a treasure of the world. How could it really be a pill to strengthen one's muscles and bones? Thank you, uncle. The two children bowed to Yi Xian again. They were very polite and courteous. This made Yi Xian smile and nod. He looked at the two children with a slightly gratified expression. Wife, let's not stand here and talk. Why aren't you welcoming elder brother into the house? Li Yuyun was full of smiles. He cordially invited Yi Xian into the house for a chat. As for the two children, they displayed an extremely affectionate attitude towards Yi Xian. They directly arrived in front of Yi Xian, shook his arm, and continuously called out for their uncle as they walked home. Yi Xian was full of smiles as he followed the two children into the straw hut. From time to time, he would laugh and tease the two children. This scene stunned Fatso Huang on the spot. Yi Yaoyue was also extremely shocked. However, the two of them quickly came to their senses and hurriedly entered the straw hut together. However, Yi Yaoyue's eyes were filled with a heavy look that could not be erased. Although Yi Xian was her elder brother, Yi Yaoyue understood Yi Xian's temperament very well. This big brother of his was a supreme figure in the world, a figure who dominated the world, a figure who suppressed an era. He was decisive in killing. All living things submitted to him. All living things feared him. Her elder brother was a ferocious person. Would he really let her family go for this so-called kinship? Yi Yaoyue did not dare to imagine it. However, she was powerless to change anything. She only hoped that her elder brother would be merciful and let her, husband, and children lived together peacefully. She did not dare to have any extravagant demands from Yi Xian. The straw hut was not big. There were only 2 narrow rooms. One was for the husband and wife, and the other was for the 2 children. Even the dining area only had a square wooden table. The entire straw hut was slightly crowded. However, it was unusually clean and tidy by the husband and wife. The few side dishes were mostly vegetarian. They were personally cooked by Yi Yaoyue. Li Yuyun took out a pot of turbid wine and personally poured a cup for Yi Xian. At the square table, Yi Xian sat down. Li Yuyun sat across from him. Yi Yaoyue and Fatso Huang stood behind the 2 of them. They had no intention of taking a seat. Fatso Huang was Yi Xian's subordinate, and Yi Yaoyue was Li Youyun's wife. In terms of etiquette, the 2 of them were not allowed to take a seat. Since we're all family, let's cut the formalities. Quickly, sit down. Yi Xian called out to the 2 of them. This made Fatso Huang give a flattering smile. He did not refuse and directly sat beside Yi Xian. Yi Yaoyue hesitated for a moment before finally sitting down. He's Fatso Huang. Although he's my subordinate, the 2 of us are actually brothers. You can call him Brother Huang in the future, Yi Xian said with a smile. Little brother Li Yuyun greets Brother Huang. Li Yuyun cupped his hands and bowed. Then, he personally filled Fatso Huang's cup with wine. I wouldn't dare, Fatso Huang said with a smile. This little sister is ashamed. Let me toast to brother. Yi Yaoyue raised the cup with both hands and solemnly bowed to Yi Xian. Then, she tilted her head back and drank the wine in the cup. Sigh. Yi Xian sighed softly and also drank the wine in the cup. Mother, I also want to toast to uncle. Father, I want one too. During the banquet, the 2 children tugged at the corners of their parents' clothes. Their faces were red as they pleaded with the couple. Don't be rude. How can you drink wine at such a young age? Quickly go back to your room and memorize your books. Li Yuyun was a scholar and was especially particular about etiquette. He hurriedly reprimanded his children. It's fine. Yi Xian smiled and called out to the 2 children, come to uncle. Uncle. The 2 children made faces at Li Yuyun and directly went to Yi Xian's side. This also made Yi Xian put the 2 children on his knees with a smile. Brother, the children are still young. They can't drink wine, Li Yuyun suddenly said anxiously. Husband, it's rare for brother to be so happy. It's fine to let the children drink a cup today. Besides, this wine isn't intoxicating. Yi Yaoyue hurriedly pulled Li Yuyun. Clearly, she was afraid that Li Yuyun would anger Yi Xian. Alright, but the 2 of you are only allowed to drink 1 cup. Do you hear me? Li Yuyun said to the 2 children with the authority of a father. Thank you, father. The 2 children giggled. Come. Uncle will drink with you. Yi Xian personally poured 2 cups of wine and drank the wine while the 2 children giggled. Strangely enough, after drinking the wine, the 2 children's faces didn't have any color. They didn't show any signs of drunkenness. Instead, they kept talking to Yi Xian as if the wine didn't affect the 2 children at all. With the union of an immortal and immortal, these 2 children were naturally not ordinary. They could be considered half immortal, so how could mere wine affect them? From time to time, the laughter of the 2 children could be heard from the small straw hut. They kept calling out, Uncle. Li Yuyun kept exchanging cups with Yi Xian and chatting about everything under the sun. This made the family banquet harmonious and happy. However, Yi Yaoyue continued to pour wine for her husband and Yi Xian. She didn't interrupt the conversation at all. Clearly, she wasn't calm at all. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 dishes, Li Yoyun's face was flushed red. His eyes were blurred. It was obvious that he was drunk. After all, he drank half a jar of wine. Moreover, He was only a mortal. Brother, you're Yaoyue's closest person. Yu Yun is truly happy that you've come to visit us today. You have to stay for a few more days to show how much we love you. Although Li Yuyun was slightly drunk, when he chatted with Yi Xian, he was completely in awe of Yi Xian's knowledge. He even treated him as a close friend. Alright, that's exactly what I was thinking. Then I'll have to trouble you, Yi Xian nodded with a smile. At this moment, hearing that Yi Xian would be staying for a few days, Yi Yaoyue's feelings were complicated. She was slightly worried. She only hoped that this brother of hers was really only here to visit her and not to take her back to the celestial court. Brother, Yu Yun is drunk. I'll send him back to his room to rest. I'll have to trouble you to rest here for the night, Yi Yaoyue said softly. Alright, go ahead, Yi Xian nodded slowly. Yi Yaoyue hurriedly helped Li Yuyun to another room. The two children had fallen asleep in Yi Xian's arms. The sky outside had already darkened. Sir, why don't you let Yaoyue stay? Fatso Huang stood up and bowed to Yi Xian. He seemed to be unable to bear it. Clearly, Fatso Huang could not bear to break up this family of four after what he had seen today. Since when have you become so benevolent? Yi Xian smiled and teased Fatso Huang. Fatty Huang bitterly smiled and said, Mister, things have already happened. Yaoyue is your adopted sister after all. Although giving birth to a pair of children with a mortal is a great mistake, with Mister's current cultivation, do you really care about such trivial matters? Chapter 992. In the human world, Yi Xian had left his mother and sister for the sake of his own cultivation. He had personally killed his childhood sweetheart, Xia Qingzhu, because he did not want his relationship to affect his cultivation. He had even killed the fairy of moon frost to overcome the second tribulation of the heavenly way. However, the union between Yi Yaoyue and Li Yuyun did not affect him at all. Yi Xian was not a killing machine, so what reason did he have to kill this family of four for no reason? Could it be that Yi Xian had a hobby of killing his own family? Or was he just a pervert? Yi Xian was a person, a living person. Although he had abandoned many things on the path of cultivation, including his family and love, he was not an animal without intelligence. That was all. The lone moon hung high in the sky. The night was hazy, and the stars dotted the night sky. Strands of moonlight poured down, illuminating the entire courtyard. In the courtyard, Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back. Yi Yaoyue knelt in front of him. Her face was rather pale, and her heart was filled with anxiety and unease. Brother, I know I was wrong. I only ask that you show mercy and let Yu Yun and the child go. Yaoyue is willing to return to the celestial court with you, Yi Yaoyue said with a trembling voice. Yaoyue, are you very afraid of me? Yi Xian helped her up as a trace of self-mockery appeared on his face. I don't dare, but you need to give the celestial court an explanation. I also know that I've shamed the celestial court and you, so I'm willing to bear all the consequences. I only ask that you don't take your anger out on Yu Yun and the child, Yi Yaoyue said in a choked voice. When a person stood at the peak, all that was left was loneliness. Whether it was the so-called family or friends, they would gradually drift away and look up to this person. Now, Yi Xian truly understood what it meant to be lonely at the top, because he could see the nervousness and reverence in Yi Yaoyue's eyes. She no longer had the admiration she had for him as a child. Heaven and earth are vast, and the four seas are vast. From the celestial court to the underworld, there is no need for me to account to anyone in the three realms of heaven, earth, and man, Yi Xian smiled faintly. Big brother, you. Yi Yaoyue was already prepared to leave with Yi Xian, but when she heard Yi Xian's words, she froze on the spot. Since Li Yuyun is the husband you chose, he is also my brother-in-law. The two children also call me uncle. It doesn't matter if he is a mortal or an immortal, this is an indisputable fact. However, I really want to know if he is qualified to be your husband, so I will stay here and take a good look. Yi Xian said with a smile. Thank you, big brother, for helping me. The sudden surprise made Yi Yaoyue choke with sobs. She really didn't expect Yi Xian to help her. This made her eyes overflow with tears of excitement. Her heart was filled with gratitude towards Yi Xian. You and I are siblings, why do you need to thank me? Yi Xian said softly. Time passed day by day. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. In this half a year, Yi Xian and Fatso Huang had completely settled down in Lotus Village. They even built a thatched cottage and lived next door to the family of 4. Rural life was peaceful and comfortable. It could be said that it was a good place to cultivate one's mind. In this half a year, Li Yuyun and Yi Xian became more familiar with each other. Almost every day, Li Yuyun would personally visit Yi Xian and chat with him. He even called him big brother. The two children shuttled between the 2 thatched cottages every day. From time to time, they could hear bursts of laughter. Yi Yaoyue was still a little worried. However, after half a year, no one from the celestial court came. Yi Xian also didn't have any intention of bringing her back to the celestial court. This gradually made Yi Yaoyue feel relieved. Finally, a long-lost smile appeared on her face. However, Fatso Huang was still worried. This was because he had never forgotten his bet with Yi Xian. However, after half a year, Yi Xian still hadn't made the slightest move. However, in this half a year, the two children recognized Fatso Huang as their adoptive father. This made Fatso Huang dote on the two children even more when he was worried. It could be said that this made him feel both pain and joy. Li Yuyun was indeed a scholar. He came to visit Yi Xian almost every day. He was just short of staying at Yi Xian's place every day. He simply regarded Yi Xian as a celestial being. He even forgot about his wife and children. Li Yuyun couldn't be blamed. After all, Yi Xian had cultivated for almost 200,000 years. Whether it was medical divination, astrology, astronomy, or geography, it could be said that he knew everything. If Li Yuyun had any questions, Yi Xian would be able to answer them. This was simply unimaginable for Li Yuyun. He completely regarded Yi Xian as his teacher. On this day, half a year later, in the thatched cottage. Elder brother, in 3 days, Yuyun will enter the capital to take the exam. When Yuyun returns from the imperial examination, I will definitely not forget elder brother's kindness in teaching me for half a year. Li Yuyun bowed 3 times to Yi Xian and said, Yuyun's talent is not shallow. He will definitely be able to pass the imperial examination. It just so happens that elder brother has nothing to do. Why don't I accompany a worthy younger brother to the capital? Yi Xian said with a faint smile. Husband, aren't we living very well right now? The so-called scholarly honor is just a false reputation. Why don't we? Yi Yaoyue was slightly tactful. Clearly, she didn't want Li Yuyun to enter the capital to take the exam. Sigh. Li Yuyun sighed and said, My wife, you are wrong. Although we scholars have no strength, we have a passionate heart to serve our country. Otherwise, if I, Li Yuyun, didn't do anything after reading the books of the sages for so many years, wouldn't I have failed the teachings of the sages in the books? This. Yi Yaoyu didn't know what to say. She knew that Li Yuyun had always wanted to be in the imperial examination, and even more, he wanted to bring happiness to the people. This was also his greatest wish. If she tried to stop him now, it would only make him unhappy. If it was before, Yi Yaoyue would naturally support him. But now, her elder brother was here. Why would he care about the so-called scholarly honor of mortals? Yu Yun is right. A man should aspire to travel far. It is time for Yu Yun's ambitions to be realized. Elder brother supports you. Yi Xian smiled. Elder brother understands me. Li Yuyun laughed heartily. She truly viewed Yi Xian as her lifelong confidant, and even viewed him as a teacher and a friend. Okay. Although Yi Yaoyue was unwilling and felt that something was wrong, even Yi Xian agreed. She didn't dare to object. Like this, the matter was settled. Fatso Huang helplessly shook his head. He knew that the bet between him and Yi Xian was about to truly begin. 3 days later. Just as dawn broke, a carriage stopped outside Lotus Village. Under the gazes of Yi Yaoyu and the 2 children, Yi Xian's group of 3 also boarded the carriage. Amidst the billowing dust, the carriage gradually disappeared into the distance. Husband, you have to come back safely. Yi Yaoyu bit her lips. There was a deep sorrow in her eyes. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.